It's great to have you all there. Right before we start, I'd like to introduce our town manager, Adam Chapdelaine. And Adam, we want to thank you so much for hosting us. And if you just come up and say a few words, that'd be great.
Thank you, Senator. And very briefly, just want to say welcome to the members of the Great and General Court, members of the Senate and House Ways and Means Committee. We're very glad to have you here today. We know it's an ordeal to come out here, and I've heard that parking was a challenge, but we're glad you're here. We're glad you get to enjoy the hall. This is where we hold our representative town meeting every year. We're starting in about a month, where residents of Arlington will deliberate on matters of policy as well as the budget. So it's very fitting that you're here today to listen to matters of the budget regarding the state budget. So welcome. Anything we can do to help make this event a success, we're here, and good luck with the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, I now call this hearing of the Joint Ways and Means Committee to order. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Friedman, and I am the Senate Vice Chair of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. Welcome to Arlington, and welcome to this hearing. The hearing will focus on fiscal year 2020 budget requests related to health and human services, and you'll be hearing from several department heads, commissioners, and secretaries. I would like to introduce my Senate colleague on the committee, Representative Garbely. How are you? And will you introduce your House colleagues and say a few words?
I'm well. Thank you very much, Chair Friedman, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here as we have a robust conversation around health and human services and our outstanding Attorney General as well. Welcome to the Arlington Town Hall. I'd like to introduce some of my outstanding House colleagues who have journeyed all around the state to be here. We have Representative Andy Vargas, Representative Tim Whalen, Representative Carolyn Dykema, Representative Todd Smola, our ranking member, Representative Angelo D'Amelia, Representative Donald Berthium, Representative David Moradian, Representative Paul Schmid, Representative Tom Walsh, and Representative Jim Arciero. And more members will be joining us throughout the day. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And I think we might want to turn, when we're done speaking, everyone should probably turn off their mics. And I would like to introduce Senator Goby, a wonderful colleague from the Senate, and I think there will be a few more senators joining us as well. Okay. Today's testimony is by invitation only. We have a full docket, so we're going to get started right away. The Joint Committee always welcomes additional written testimony which may be addressed to the committee at the State House. You are also welcome at any of our public hearings scheduled at the State House and may sign up in advance to testify. So we're now going to begin, and the first person I'd like to call up is Attorney General Maura Healey.
Good morning, Chairwoman, and members of the Joint Committee. It's terrific to be here with all of you this morning. It's great to be here in the wonderful town of Arlington. Special greetings to Representative Garbely and as well as our friend Senator Friedman for hosting. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear before you this morning. I want to thank you at the outset for the work that you and your teams have done with my office. I know we've had a lot of dialogue, a lot of communication on a lot of fronts, and I just want to promise you that we'll continue to try to be a resource to you and your teams as we work through together complicated and challenging issues facing our state and our residents. But I really appreciate very much and have seen firsthand the dedication and commitment and tireless effort that each and every one of you and your teams put in every day. And a lot of that, none of that really ever gets the attention or the accolades or takes any of the headlines. But as a colleague and somebody who I hope you view as a partner and somebody in public service, I just really appreciate the work that you all do and the way that you do that work day in and day out. I'm here today to ask for more money. to ask for more resources, to thank you for the resources that you've given our team over the last 4 years. We've enjoyed a close working relationship with you and our partners at the local level as well. As you know, our office plays a particular role in the lives of people here in the state, a significant law enforcement role, both civil and criminal. And we also are there as a resource with many hotlines that constituents and others can call seeking assistance on a variety of fronts. Every day, I'm proud to show up and work with my team in the Attorney General's office. We've got a staff of really dedicated lawyers and investigators and paralegals and others who are working to protect the public, to represent the state, to partner on key initiatives with the business community, with the NGO community, and our colleagues across government. And most of all, important for this committee, for the purpose of actually generating revenue for the state. Last year alone, my office brought back more than $59 million to the general fund. That's just in the form of penalties that we've recovered from various investigations and cases. In looking at the bigger picture, though, of what we do, looking at total recoveries and savings for the state and its taxpayers, last year was a significant year. Our office recovered or saved $70 for every dollar invested in our office. Now, one significant factor that led to that sizable recovery related to our work involving the utility industry. And Massachusetts utility customers were the first customers in the country that received billions in savings that were due following last year's federal tax cut. Our office immediately put out a call following that tax cut and demanded that utilities share those windfalls with ratepayers. They did, and I was pleased to see that other states took up the charge, but that's an example of the work that we do. We also recovered tens of millions of dollars for workers, consumers, insurance policyholders, and environmental cleanup. We cover a lot of ground in the office, as you know. Last year, for example, we embarked on a national case against the opioid manufacturers and distributors, most notably Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family and its executives for their role in creating this terrible crisis. We expanded our abandoned housing initiative, which is out there in communities around the state, helping to clean up, rehabilitate blighted properties. We're now in 140 cities and towns, including most recently the Centerville neighborhood in Lowell, where for the first time we're trying this project of revitalizing a dozen properties all at once, and that will really help transform that area, importantly bringing those properties back on the tax roll. With thanks to the legislature, our victim compensation program now covers funeral and burial expenses for all victims of homicide, a critical step towards helping families bury the loved ones with respect and dignity that they deserve. Our Medicaid fraud division, I think last year alone, brought back $45 million to Mass Health. That came by way of 18 cases and ultimately civil settlements with various entities, including major pharmacy chains, home health agencies, and doctors. We also secured a number of criminal convictions against those who schemed to defraud Mass Health services. That work is important and will continue robustly in the office. Our Fair Labor Division received almost 6,000 complaints and as a result issued 600 citations assessing over $6 million in restitution to workers who essentially had their wages stolen from them. And all of our work on community engagement has been pretty intense. I appreciate, once again, the opportunity to be in many of your districts with my team on trainings and events, whether it's educating seniors on how to not get scammed or ripped off, spending time in schools with young people, doing a number of trainings on Know Your Rights in the law. It's been terrific, including we did an event not long ago right here at the Council on Aging and at the Boys and Girls Club. And through this program, the last few years, we've been able to connect directly with over 20,000 community members. So whether we're working directly with families or residents, handling the significant litigation, or providing attempting to provide the highest quality representation to our state agencies in the Commonwealth. I think our team is doing and will continue to do important work. So we want to keep doing that work, and we want to build on that work, and that's why I am here once again seeking your help. As you know, in House 1, the governor proposed $51.5 million for our office. I am here asking for a total of just over $52.8 million for fiscal year 20. We've submitted our numbers to your staffs with some further details on each of the requests. But to summarize, the demands on our office continue to increase, and we must have sufficient funding to be able to continue our vital work. So as compared to House 1, here's what we're looking for specifically. An increase of just over $1.2 million to our main account, support for the governor's appropriation of all remaining accounts, including increases to our wage enforcement and public utilities accounts, and a small but critical increase of $31,000 to our office's state police unit. Our main account funds the majority of our operations, including our representation of the state and state agencies when they're sued, our civil and criminal enforcement related to drug trafficking, human trafficking, healthcare, civil rights, consumer protection, environmental protection, among other issues. The main account are the funds that consistently make this office, importantly, the revenue generator for the state. As we rely on our main account to hire and retain highly qualified and specialized attorneys, investigators, and analysts, they're the ones that are really making all of this go. And so, again, our main account request is that it be increased by just over $1.2 million. With regard to wage enforcement, when I first took office, our Fair Labor Division was receiving about 4,000 complaints each year for wage theft. We're now taking in over 6,500 complaints annually. As public awareness of wage theft has grown, and while our federal partners have scaled back the enforcement work, more of it has fallen to our office. As you know, for the last few sessions, there has been an inability to reach a consensus on a wage theft bill. But there is broad consensus by all parties regarding enforcement from the Attorney General's office. The administration in House 1 recognized the critical need and provided us with a 15% increase we asked for. I'm here today asking the committee to support this increase. With regard to public utilities, we're asking the committee to support the increased budget for our ratepayer advocacy on behalf of the state's millions of utility customers and their families. In recent years, the number of gas and electricity rate cases at the DPU has increased. And when the utilities go before the DPU seeking to increase our rates, it's up to our office to be there to represent residential and commercial ratepayers. So with more filings, more work for our lawyers and our team. Our work now includes review of water rate cases and, importantly, the state's long-term contracts for wind and hydropower. That's new work for the team in the office. This year, of course, we also spent considerable time engaged on issues ranging from the impacts on customers and workers of National Grid's lockout to the ongoing recovery process in the Merrimack Valley. That continues to this day. I'm proud of the work we've done to help residents and businesses navigate a complicated claims process. As you know, I sent teams up there for weeks on end to be on the ground, to help small business owners, to help residents navigate the claims process and literally be an advocate for them. But we also have ongoing investigation and work with respect to what actually happened there. So I know that work is going to continue. More will be on our plate, and therefore I respectfully ask that you support the 8% increase reflected in House 1. And finally, I ask that you consider a modest increase for our state police unit, who every day is working hand in hand with our team and local departments on complex criminal investigations. We are really hitting it hard when it comes to investigations around the trafficking of heroin and fentanyl. I don't just come before you. I worked hard to secure $3 million from the U.S. Department of Justice. Working together with the state of New Hampshire, we're going to use that money to help support overtime for local police departments. but I'm asking that we have within our office another $31,000 to help our detectives assigned to the Attorney General's Office State Police Unit, who every day are out there really giving it their all. For all of the remaining accounts, I respectfully request that you support the governor's appropriation as proposed in House 1, including our essential work on false claims, civil penalties, victim compensation, and the opioid epidemic. Fully funding our requests will allow my office to maximize our return of funds for the state and taxpayers while maintaining the workforce that makes everything we do possible. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you this morning, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney General. Thank you so much for your testimony, and I think I can speak on all of our behalfs to say thank you for all the work that your office does and the support that you give us in the legislature. And I am especially happy to hear about the attention to wage theft and to Medicaid fraud. I think that that's really important, and I know we are depending on your office more and more to ensure that our laws are enforced. So I really appreciate that. Before we go on, I'd like to welcome Senator Fatman. Welcome to Arlington. Glad you're here. I just have one question. I'll start off. I know that you're doing work around behavioral health parity. I know you've done some important work. I know there was, I think, a case with Aetna. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you might be doing in the future and if you think you have the funds to continue to do that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think that, you know, the perspective I have, having traveled around the state the last 4 years, having spent a lot of time in small group discussions, a lot of time in schools, actually, as part of our effort to address the opioid crisis. I'm spending a lot of time in middle schools and high schools, spending a lot of time connecting with grandparents who are raising grandchildren right now. I think if you even look as a sample, small sample, of the people who come through our doors, who show up at the Attorney General's office seeking help, not dissimilar from the folks you see going through district court this morning or showing up in emergency rooms, there is such a significant need for services for behavioral health. So I stand so strongly in support of resources for behavioral health services in this state. I'll tell you what we have been doing as an office. One of the charges we have is to enforce laws that are on the books, including laws that call for parity when it comes to behavioral health. You alluded, Chairwoman, to the recent settlement with Aetna, where we investigated Aetna as an insurer for not treating insureds with regard to behavioral health services the same way they were treating those folks with regard to medical or physical ailments. And I'm pleased with that resolution and hope that it sends a signal to other insurers here in the state about our expectations for behavioral health. That particular resolution addressed the issue of provider networks. And I know, I think we all know, how difficult it is to actually find a behavioral health provider, whether it's for your son or daughter or somebody else in your family or yourself. It's tough. So there's a dearth of providers out there, in part, I think, created by the fact that our system hasn't reimbursed behavioral health specialists and providers the same way we've reimbursed others. So that requires a more systemic change. But the failure of networks to actually adequately disclose who's on the books, who people can dial up, who's taking patients is a real problem. So we have focused on that particular issue. There's ongoing work out of our office in that space. But I am in touch with the team, who I know is talking to folks on your staff and throughout the legislature on the issue of behavioral health. What do we need to do? How do we get there? And I can't underscore, in my view, as a matter of public health, granted I'm just a JD, not an MD, but as a matter of public health, as a matter of public safety, how important these investments are. I think more upfront investments really will lead to fewer problems down the road. And, it's heartbreaking when I visit a district and hear that, the waiting list for a young person to really be seen is as much as 6 months on a school referral. We can't do that in the life of our kids. So I'll stand in partnership and as an ally with anyone and everyone on the need to do more when it comes to behavioral health. This is not a Massachusetts problem. This is a problem that we're facing across this country. But as Massachusetts has led on so many fronts, including ensuring universal access to health care, I really hope we can do what needs doing. And I know it's not easy.
Thank you, and we will continue to look at the systemic issues, but it's great to have the Attorney General's office eyes on this problem as well, so thank you. I'd like to open it up to questions. Rep. Garbley?
Thank you very much, Chair Friedman. Just would like to echo what Senator Friedman said in terms of you and your office and the work on consumer protection across the state. Before I ask my question, I do want to introduce, we had Representative Jay Livingstone and Representative Brian Murray join us as well. I know a few weeks ago was National Consumer Protection Week, and I know that you and your office traveled across all 351 cities and towns to talk about elder abuse and foreclosure protection and different things around that front. Thank you for doing that. Does this budget allow you and your office to continue to be the strong consumer protection office that you've been since your time as Attorney General? What we are
proposing, what we are seeking, will, in our view, enable us to do that. One of the great things I get every week is a report from our hotlines, and the report is, basically so-and-so on our team helped this student get a discharge of $10,000 on her student loan because she was the victim of an unfair student loan servicing practice. The people who get refunds from companies that are taking advantage of them, whether it's an auto dealership or whether it's a cable company, there are any number of calls happening as we speak where people from our office are on the horn talking with entities trying to get relief and a break for someone who deserves it, who's entitled to it, but doesn't have the wherewithal or doesn't have the advocate, doesn't have the backing of an office like ours to make that happen. So I think this work is really, really important, and to me it's among the most satisfying work that we can do to help people with these issues, because $700 for somebody, $500 for somebody, $1,300 for somebody, that's the difference between making rent, making a car payment, making a mortgage payment, and we're doing that every day. So I think it's really important, and that's what the main accounts, that's an example of why we're seeking the additional $1.2 million from the main account, because if we can provide more financial security or stability to families, we know that's going to help us generally as a state, and that's where we've got to be. So we're active and engaged, and I want to continue to be, but there's a lot of business for us on those hotlines, and that's why we need the additional funding.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today and for the great work that your staff does and helps us on a regular basis. It certainly means a great deal to us in the legislature that they're always available. I've got a quick question relative to the exploration of the issue of expanded gaming online. Can you give us any sense of some major concerns that you have? I mean, now that we've had this kind of federal determination that we can, I guess some people don't necessarily agree with that, but that we can go down this path of actually doing online sports betting, and then we've also had testimony from others before us relative to expanding general, gaming online as well, buying lottery tickets and things like that. Can you give us some concerns that you or your office may have relative to that expansion and what we should be keeping on our radar screen in terms of any legislation down the road?
Sure. I think that, and it probably won't come as a surprise to you, the areas of focus. We were always concerned about what's happening to consumers out there and want to make sure that some of what we've raised as concerns with respect to brick and mortar gaming here in the state are accounted for in any online betting or gaming. That's important. So protecting consumers, I always have a concern about young people and their ability and their facility with the online medium, and how do we protect against young people getting hooked, getting addicted. We know gambling addiction is real, and what are we going to put in place in terms of measures to mitigate, to reduce the risk of harm, particularly to young people, though not limited to young people. You know, what are the other stopgap measures we need to put in place? What's happening with respect to keeping this clean as an industry? My gaming division spends time and has spent time investigating and bringing criminal action against criminal gaming enterprises and organizations. A lot of what we've done over the last 4 years online relates to the offshore betting. And, you know, it would be my hope that with legalization, we'd see a reduction in that, but we've got to keep our eye on what's happening in that space. I respect the work of this body. It will be for others to determine in terms of policy and practice and how online gaming would go, if it should go here in the state. So I sort of want to promise all of you that my team will be here in the background to provide input, to provide certainly our articulation of concerns, but I know we'll have as a state, a healthy and engaged debate and discussion on these issues. Thank you.
To the concerns of communities, and so much of that drives your work. I just wanted to take the opportunity not to ask a question, but just to highlight some of the work that you do that may not be known to many people, and that's in the environmental area. And you know, it doesn't get necessarily front page news all the time, but you have a tremendously expert group of environmental advocates and folks working on issues, and I wanted to raise one, which is pollinators, something that I've been working on for some time, and you and your office have actually taken on some corporations to hold them accountable for a related issue, which is consumer protection around products that include pesticides, and that is so important. There's a formidable lobby, I would say, of folks who are very strongly advocating for some of these pesticides, which are shown increasingly to be really harmful to pollinators, which are maybe not voters, but some of our smallest residents. So I just wanted to acknowledge the important work that you do there, and I know you've kind of taken on a special role with some legislation that I filed and being a co-sponsor of that legislation to, again, just kind of put your fingerprint on those issues that are so important to the Commonwealth, and I wanted to just offer you a public thanks for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Representative, and thank you for that legislation. Pollinators, bees, really important stuff because they actually are really important to our economy. And, you know, we've seen what's happened with declining bee populations around the country. So this presents a real economic issue as well. And we're happy to be there as a state that I think has led the way in terms of sounding the alarm on what's happening out there with some of these pesticide companies and others. So thank you, and thank you for your, I think you have a dragonfly on today?
I do.
Yes, we like dragonflies too. Nice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank you, Madam Attorney General, for the work that your team has done down on the South Coast, where a group of folks who call themselves farmers, but from the way they were treating their animals clearly weren't. And your team has been very good in prosecuting, working to prosecute those folks, and more importantly, to explain what you're doing to the many folks who are concerned about how animals are being treated. And we really appreciate that communication that's gone on from your office. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Representative. And what happened in Westport with the animal abuse and cruelty was really horrifying. I think it was a case that we opened an investigation on just as I was taking office. And that has been a challenge for us, explaining what the bounds of the law are, what's actually achievable in terms of penalties in court, because in the face of understandable angst and anger and outrage, it's not uncommon for people to think that sometimes the penalties don't match the bad acts. But I appreciate the opportunity to have that communication. That will continue. We want to make sure that those instances, those cases are reported to our office, and that we're able to take action and able to work with local boards of health and others on how to identify and how to head this off. So I really appreciate the work of you and your team in helping us do our job.
You know, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on. No, it's right there. Oh, now it's on. There we go. Good morning and thank you. I also want to say a thank you to your team. They're always excellent anytime we email or give a call. I think lately I've been bugging Shane and Alicia quite a bit, but they're terrific. And I also want to thank you because it's nice also to have those regional offices that you have. Makes it a lot easier for our constituents, all of our constituents, to access, and that is a really big help. I just have maybe not so much a question as a comment, and I know it's probably already on your radar screen, with the recent SJC decision that affected farmers. It's the Chang case, and that's a decision relative to overtime compensation. And as you know, we're all very concerned about wage theft and people not getting what they should get, but also recognizing that there are various exemptions that exist in other states to make sure that we're protecting, especially a lot of the small farmers and agriculture in Massachusetts. And I understand that you have enforcement, and I would assume that with that decision, with that case, that enforcement would start probably immediately. I'm not really quite sure. But I'm just hoping that we'll have an opportunity to maybe talk and to figure out if there is a legislative fix for this, which I'm obviously hoping that there is, to make sure that we find a way to protect everyone concerned, including our farmers.
Yeah. Well, Senator, I'm committed to that. There was a recent SJC decision that dealt with the applicability of certain exemptions for overtime under our overtime law for workers. And I appreciate, the differences in terms of circumstance. I have a lot of respect and regard for our farmers here in this state, and they are small businesses, and they're working at super, super thin margins in an industry and in a space that is so dependent on so many other things beyond their control. So I think our team should talk. We should take a look at the decision and the potential consequence of that decision. I am absolutely, steadfast in my belief that we got to make sure that people don't get their wages stolen, and that we don't see the shady operators out there who, aren't paying minimum wage, aren't paying prevailing wage, aren't abiding by workplace safety laws, who are just sort of fly by night with a group of workers in and then out, and then a new group coming in the following week, and it's very hard as a matter of law enforcement. I think we know and can make the distinctions among industries and what we're seeing. This may be an area where we need to work together and assess what that decision means. I think another example of an opportunity for us to have the kind of communication you'd want us to have, so that we're working in furtherance of something that really does serve the public interest.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Attorney General, for your testimony. I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about vaping. I've been really encouraged to see all of your work on that. It's been fantastic. It's been incredible to hear these companies say that they exist for the sole purpose of weaning people off of cigarettes while also directly marketing to young people who have never smoked cigarettes before. So that's been very encouraging. Thank you for that. It was encouraging to see the governor put in his budget effectively a 40% tax on e-cigarette products. We have a bill in the legislature that we filed with about 60 of our colleagues that would bring that closer to a 70% wholesale tax, which we think would be enough to change the behaviors of young people. So looking at cigarettes as a model for that. When we tax cigarettes, as you know, young people's behaviors changed because it just became too expensive for them to buy. So I'm curious as to whether or not you've taken a look at those kind of two proposals and whether or not you think it's something that we should address within the budget.
Yeah, I really appreciate the question and the topic. And we are looking at the language right now and the proposals. I haven't taken a position on it yet. I expect to, and to work with all of you on that. This is a super serious problem. I started sounding the alarm on this last spring because as I was going around listening to middle school kids in these roundtables where we're talking about our opioid education program, the thing they kept coming back to and that school nurses kept talking about was vaping and juuling in the bathroom and the confiscation of vaping machines and the high percentage. I mean, I'm talking 50, 60, 80%. These are the numbers told to me of high school kids, now 8th graders. I just heard the other day from somebody who reported that 50% of the 8th graders in the school are vaping. It's really outrageous. I've seen what's happened. I've seen what this company has done. And we need to do everything we can to get ahead. If we need to update existing laws here in Massachusetts in the face of federal inaction, I want to work with you on that. If we need to think about taxing or other things, I want to work with you and think about that. We need advocacy and work in coordination with our congressional delegation. I've been working with my state attorneys general colleagues on this issue. We were just meeting with the FDA a couple weeks ago in DC about this. I was supposed to be meeting with then FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb, but from the time he got up, left the dais, and was making his way to meet with me in the conference room down the hall, he resigned. So we don't know what's happening right now with the FDA. We know that tobacco is big in this space. Altria, which was Philip Morris, bought a 35% stake in Juul. So this is what's going on. It was a company that was billed as a tech company, as a company that was going to be out there saving lives, promoting smoking cessation. That's all well and good, getting people off combustible cigarettes onto non-combustible forms. That's great. But that's not what we've seen. And from the launch of their 2015 social media campaign, it was all about creating a market for young people, for a new generation. And so I struggle. I know I've heard from so many parents whose kids are struggling right now with nicotine addiction. I've talked to so many pediatricians who are treating kids who are literally sleeping with vaping machines under their pillows. And we know now with the pods and the fillable pods, it's not just nicotine that's going into those machines. So big issue, big opportunity for health and awareness and education. We've got to get the word out because unfortunately a lot of these kids and their parents think it's harmless. It's fruit juice, it's harmless. But there are serious consequences, so I think it's something we really should focus on.
Yeah, I appreciate all you're doing on that. Thank you.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for your hard work, and as I'm sure you're not surprised, I will be strongly supporting your ask for more money for state police overtime, because my former colleagues do excellent work, as does everybody else that works in your office. The question that I have for you, Madam Attorney General, is could you just highlight for us a little bit of the work that your office does to help eliminate or reduce the proliferation of heroin and fentanyl in the state? And what I'm looking at in particular is the task force approach that's proven so effective in the past. And if you wouldn't mind expanding on that from the narcotic trafficking and the work with DEA and your municipal partners as well into gun trafficking, with ATF partnering with them as well, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, and thank you for your support for the funding requests with regard to state police. We don't talk about this a lot. Sometimes, by nature of the subject matter, where there are ongoing investigations, criminal investigations, we have to be mindful about that. But I'll tell you a little bit about where we're at. I have increased within my office sixfold the resources out of our criminal bureau to address issues of drug trafficking and relatedly gun trafficking, because a lot of times, of course, and you know from your experience, that when you find drugs, you're finding guns, illegally trafficked guns as well. So I think partnership is really important. We have worked and continue to work with the drug trafficking unit based in Lawrence. That is a unit comprised of local, state, and federal agents who are out there every day investigating and bringing cases. We have had a lot of coordination with DEA, and also, as I mentioned, with the state of New Hampshire. I think we recognize, and as somebody who grew up on the border in New Hampshire and has a lot of family, in Essex County, we understand the trade that's happening right now in the pipeline. So I think our ability to work together has been really, really important. We have taken hundreds of millions of doses, lethal doses of fentanyl and heroin off of the streets. The problem is, though, the supply keeps, it's there, and the demand is there. The demand is there. So I think we've got to do a few things. One, continue to do the intense drug trafficking investigation and enforcement work that we're doing. I'm glad that we got more resources, most recently from the Federal Department of Justice. 3 years ago, I asked for $1 million, and I got that to fund police operations. I just obtained another $3 million this year to fund those operations. And so we got to continue hard with that. We got to continue to work in partnership with DEA and with the New Hampshire authorities, as well as our local partners. And with ATF, this has absolutely been an important partnership in working with them to address the trafficking of illegal guns. I continue to support national reforms around background checks and the like, knowing that over 60% of the guns that turn up in Massachusetts crimes come from other states, and they have been illegally trafficked in. So that's important work we got to continue. I do think we've got to continue with the education, though, and the prevention, treating those who are sick right now, treating those who are addicted, but also heading it off for the sake of today's 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th graders, who increasingly are entering a scary world. They're pressing pills of fentanyl right now, and so the stuff that's out there, I don't think we can do enough in terms of raising the awareness. And I'm certainly open to any ideas. I have a good working relationship with the Executive Office of Public Safety and with our local police departments and the chiefs as well. And I am somebody who is open to any idea about how we can better address the issue of drug trafficking and gun trafficking in this state.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Attorney General, for your
I
testimony.
apologize, Rep. Before you continue, I'd like to welcome Rep. Tom Stanley and Rep. James Kelcourse.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. I just wanted to applaud you and your office for your work in getting your arms around the student debt crisis, especially with settlement enforcement procedures you've moved forward with these fly-by-night companies. It's a huge issue. Massachusetts is average student debt for a student, our publics and our privates, are around $32,000 to $33,000, and it's in line on the national student debt crisis. So I want to applaud your office for that, and I guess ask a sort of a softball question, but does your office, does your budget recommendations that you have, do they reflect your important work on moving forward with cracking down on these somewhat fly-by-night, if you will, companies that are, putting our students in holes of thousands and thousands of dollars?
Thank you, Representative, for that question. Absolutely, and part of the main line, the main account, I should say, funding goes directly to supporting the lawyers who are doing the consumer protection work in this space. When I started, I moved some things around and actually created within the office a student loan assistance unit. We are $1.4 or $5 trillion in student debt and growing in this country. The debt of here in Massachusetts is significant. There was a recent report about the just incredible amount of debt that people in our state have when it comes to student loans. So we set up that unit. Every day I tell people, look, if you're facing default, if you're behind in your loans, if you're in trouble, if you feel like you've been the victim of a bad loan servicing practice, call our office, and our team of mediators and others will work on helping you get into repayment plans. It's also been the source, though, for us to be able to identify problems and take actions. And that includes suing any number of loan servicers and getting relief from them. but also suing a not-so, or hopefully not-so, fly-by-night operation, and that is the federal government, who's completely bailed on its obligations to students. And we have sued Betsy DeVos and her administration a number of times to simply get them to do their job, which is to not take advantage of students. And we've been successful in those litigations, but it was sort of pathetic that we actually had to go to court to get them to follow through with their obligation to discharge students' debt who were the victim of predatory practices. So that's where we're at. I think this work continues and continues to be important, and some of the $1.2 million that I'm seeking for our main account will directly impact and support that work.
Well, thank you very much for your work. You know, certainly we in the legislature still have a lot of work to do as well on the issue, but it's just really noted your hard work on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the Attorney General? Well, thank you. I'm sure you're going to come back in a couple weeks and remind us all of all the love we gave you today and and that budget item. But I mean, this is really representative of all the work you do and how important it is and how dependent we all are on it. So we can't thank you enough, and thank you so much for coming to Arlington.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for what you do. I know you've got an important docket of work this morning on Health and Human Services. And as I said at the outset, I'll be here, my team will be here in partnership, in communication, in dialogue, you know, as we go forward. And it's a privilege and an honor to be able to be here this morning and to serve as your Attorney General. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next testimony we'll hear is from the Department of Children and Families, Commissioner Linda Spears. Commissioner, welcome.
Good morning.
So nice to have you in Arlington. Thank you for coming.
It's good to be here.
Please proceed.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all and good to be here. Excuse me if I am popping lozenges a little bit throughout. I'm getting over a little bit of a lung infection, but we will proceed with our remarks and with any questions and answers that you may have. It is a pleasure to be here, and I want to say good morning to Vice Chair Friedman, Representative Garbely, and the members of the committee. As you may know, my name is Linda Spears, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families. I want to thank you for the opportunity to update you on the important work of the agency, our accomplishments, and our current priorities, and on the Governor's fiscal year 2020 budget proposal. As many of you know, DCF embarked on an ambitious and unprecedented reform effort in September of 2015, when we set about to rebuild and stabilize the organization from the ground up. I will begin today with sharing with you some of the strides that we've made along the way towards the reforms and the milestones that we have reached in doing so, none of which would have been possible without the sustained support of Governor Baker, Secretary Sutters, and of you, the members of the legislature, who have been here from the day I walked in the door to support this. So on behalf of the department, let me thank you for lending your support to us and for sustaining it. In partnership with the legislature, the administration has added more than $180 million to the department's budget over the past 4 years. The governor's FY20 budget proposes to add an additional $43 million to the DCF budget, supporting an overall increase of more than 600 new staff since 2015. Increased funding has allowed our reforms to move forward. Equally imperative has been the tremendous work of my staff. Although initiatives may originate in a particular office or unit, It takes the combined efforts of everyone in the agency to put them into action. Prior to my appointment as commissioner, I co-authored the CWLA Quality Improvement Report. The CWLA report was released in May of 2014 and called for updating and developing new policies, reducing caseload, increasing management oversight, strengthening clinical practice, and establishing a CQI function, as well as ensuring that the legislative mandate for licensure and adequate training was adhered to. We as an agency to continue to follow and build on the CWLA blueprint, and I'd like to highlight a few of our accomplishments over the last few years. In December 2018, the average weighted caseload in the department was 18.13 to 1 worker, with an average of 15.3 families assigned per ongoing social worker. Some of you know that our bargaining unit agreement calls for an 18 to 1 weighted caseload and 15 families for social worker. This rate that we have received, 15.3 families and 18.1 weighted cases, is down from an all-time high of 22.33 in June of 2016. It is also the third lowest caseload since January of 2015, when the department first implemented the 15-to-1 standard, adjusting for how cases would be counted. Importantly, we've sustained lower caseloads for more than a year, and caseloads for the last 5 months of the available data are well below 19-to-1 on an average weighted basis across the state. Weighted caseloads of 18.1 or lower remain our target for all social work staff. In 2017, January 2017, the department hired for the first time 15 foster home recruiters. Through their hard work, the department has closed calendar year 2018 with 300 more unrestricted foster homes than we had prior to the recruiters' arrival. They are working hard to grow our community of foster parents, a vital, vital resource for us in the work that we do every single day. The recruiters in the last 2 years have done more than 2,500 community events all across the state in an effort to engage people in the conversation about what our foster parents need, what our foster youth need, and to hope that people in each and every one of your communities and statewide will become foster or adoptive parents. At the same time, the department is working equally hard to support our current foster homes. In the last year, we held our second round of annual regional foster parent forums. These are listening sessions in which management, social workers, and foster parents sit down together and talk about the issues and concerns that families may have. We've increased the number of foster parent support groups across the state and launched a statewide email list so we can provide families with better information and updates about benefits and services in real time. This email list would seem like a very small improvement in the department, but in reality there had been nothing other than snail mail means of communication on a routine basis with our foster parents before we did this. So it is a big deal for us in terms of being able to communicate routinely with folks. We are also excited to go from old technology to no technology to old technology to really new technology, and we're building currently a foster parent intranet portal, which is in the testing phases and will be rolled out this spring for all foster parents. It will allow foster parents to access anytime, 24/7, any information that they need, resources, questions, procedures, etc., that they will need information for. Between September 2015 and September 2018, the number of kinship foster homes also increased statewide by 16%. Increasing our kinship care homes is as important as increasing our unrestricted foster homes. Research tells us that as an initial placement with a family that a child knows is more stable and less traumatizing for the child. Last year, I shared with you the encouraging results of the early stages of our family and kinship partnership pilot, where we designated one social worker in an area office to work intensively to locate kin for children who might be suitable to serve as foster parents from the moment of intake. Those social workers have jumped in with both feet, and their efforts resulted in a 56% improvement in initial consent placements in 2018 for the offices where pilots were. For 2019, we are expanding the pilot from 5 to 14 offices statewide, as well as growing our other efforts. Adoptions increased as well in 2018. By 22% as we added more social work staff to our regional adoption units, and recruiters were brought on to assist in recruiting pre-adopted families. We have honored our commitment to treating our policies as living documents. Before this administration, it had been many years since policies had been previously updated. 3 months into 2019, we have already updated and implemented 2 additional policies: children who are missing or absent, and foster care review. The missing or absent children policy now provides more guidance on run prevention and includes protocols for children involved with the department, not just those in placement. Foster care review is a federally mandated meeting of biological parents, foster parents, DCF staff, and community volunteers who together examine case progress and plan for the child's future after departmental care, whether that is through reunification with birth family, through guardianship with kin or others, or with other lifelong connections. This year, updates to the foster care review policy are the first since 2008. And with that, we have done a significant modernization of the technology supports under our foster care review policy, doing things like automating scheduling, calendaring, et cetera, so that people who are outside of the department will be able to participate in the planning of meetings more effectively. This new policy will create more procedural uniformity and emphasize what we think is one of the most important pieces of reforms now and going forward, and that is a focus on permanency for children who are in our care, particularly older youth. Finally, I'm pleased to be able to say that we have achieved 100% licensure of DCF social work staff. Every staff person is in compliance who is on the workforce today. I think last year we were very, very close at about 95%, 97%. This year we got there, so we are very, very excited about that. These accomplishments stem from the first phase of our agency improvement leadership team, as we call it AILT. We've used AILT models since September of 15 to address complex challenges more efficiently and to help drive cultural and organizational change within DCF. Under it, we gather our team of central office staff, regional directors, and other managers from the field to discuss and focus on priorities for agency improvement. Our team of captains meets every week, and our full team of participants also meets every week. There are 2 meetings each week on the reform work that we're doing so that we don't fall off the rail and that we keep things moving forward. For phase 2 of agency improvement, we have identified 4 new priorities for improvement. And we have dedicated internal work teams to each of those areas. And those are permanency, placement stability, social work practice, and services for intact families. The Humanizing Social Work Practice Group is a new and I think an innovative piece of work that we'll be doing. It is strengthening and really developing approaches to strengthen clinical practice and emphasize responsiveness to toxic stress and to trauma in our daily work, a topic that I know is of interest to some of you. This will be accomplished by embedding practices that can help reduce trauma to children when they are removed from home, and by improving the quality of visits with children, whether they're visits by our social worker or visits between children and their parents and family members. We believe that treating families with respect and understanding that family struggles can contribute to child abuse and neglect must be inherent to the work of the agency, even as we strive to keep children safe. One of the most awesome responsibilities of a child welfare agency is to stabilize children in a permanent, loving home as quickly as we possibly can. The Timely and Appropriate Permanency Outcomes Work Group is taking a hard look at our current policies and processes around reunification, around adoption, and around other permanent plans to see where we can be more efficient and more effective. When children can no longer safely remain with their families, we must find the best possible match possible, whether it's a relative, a foster parent, or for children with therapeutic needs, a residential treatment or congregate care program. The appropriate, safe, and stable, and well-supported placements work group is building on the foster parent recruitment and retention initiatives from the first phase of our work, while devoting new energy and expanding their focus to the department's use of kinship care. The kinship care work we'll talk a little bit more about in a second, but it's a really critical piece of our reform work to better engage kin, and I'll share some information with you in a moment. But we believe that developing stronger working relationships with our foster parents and providing more resources to help and support foster parents who cope with the emotional toll of serving in this role is critical. Many of you know that foster care is a challenging piece of work. Our foster parents do it out of love and devotion, but they too experience the stress of dealing with a complex system and dealing with children who have difficult behavioral problems. And it is our intent to do more than we have done in the past and to continue to grow our capacity to provide them with clinical and other peer supports that will help them to manage the stress and to stay with us as long as they possibly can. As I mentioned before, I'm very proud of the enthusiasm and the creativity of our foster care recruiters who have brought on a network of more than 300 foster homes. As we've tracked the work that they have done, we know we need to cover much more ground in some areas of the Commonwealth, and know that in some communities we need to have more capacity. So this winter we are in the process of hiring 3 additional recruiters that will probably be on the ground in the next 30 days, recognizing the needs of specific communities, in particular Hampden County, Berkshire, Worcester, and Barnstable counties. So we have added those capacities to our Western, Central, and Southern regional offices. As we progress, we will continue to track the progress and the capacity and the needs of those regions of the state and make sure that we're balancing the capacity of our recruiters with the demands and the support needs of families in those communities. But we all know it is not as simple as adding more foster homes. Foster parents put their heart and their soul into caring for our children. Doctor's appointments, therapy, soccer practice, school conferences, daily visits with parents, meetings with attorneys, and all parts of things that they know and deserve are all of our support. We continue to build on our new communication channels, as I've described earlier, and strengthen our support for our foster parents. Importantly, we will be enhancing resources for kinship parents as well. We do not necessarily have the same scope of supports and services for kin served in the department as we do for foster families. In the fall, we received a $300,000 grant from the federal government, and we're using it to hire 3 new staff who will help us in developing program for kinship foster parents, including specialized training, new informational material, and a website. It will be called Kinship Navigator, and it's designed to help kin really navigate the complexities of what it means to be grandma, grandpa, aunt, or uncle taking care of kids. As we know, kin who take care of kids often didn't plan on raising their grandchildren, and the kinds of support they need are beyond that of a typical foster parent. They may be, in fact, in retirement and may need support for income. They may need additional housing supports or others that we would want to pay attention to. This new program will allow us to build those linkages and connections so that foster parents get information about services that they need. At any given time, DCF serves approximately 80% of the children in open and DCF cases in-home. In these cases, our primary role is to connect services, families to services, and parents to services, and to help them build skills to better parent children in their homes. Depending on the families, services may include behavioral health, substance abuse treatment, in-home therapy, parenting classes, parent coaching, employment assistance, or help with financial resources. The Safe and Appropriate Services to Intact Families Work Group is evaluating the department's utilization of services across the state to better understand existing strengths and needs while examining our current practice to ensure that parents have a voice in planning and decision-making for the services that they receive. This work group is developing new tools and processes for area offices to leverage their clinical meetings to better coach and mentor staff with the goal of improving critical thinking and decision-making. Additionally, the department is engaged in an significant effort designed to redesign our ambulatory behavioral health care system that is delivered in the Commonwealth. In collaboration with other EOHS agencies, the Secretariat, we are working to create a treatment system that presents a no wrong door point of entry with same-day access, which integrates addiction, mental health services, provides community-based crisis response, meets the unique needs of children and youth, and upholds consistent evidence-based practice standards. Work is underway to align payments and policies to streamline licensure and credentialing, and over the next year, we will engage closely with stakeholders, including consumers, advocates, providers, plans, and others. Let me now turn a little bit to our budget overview. As all of this work, as I noted before, would not be possible without the administration's steadfast commitment and belief in the mission of the department, a mission to keep children safe. Governor Baker's FY20 budget recommends funding for the department at just over $1.05 billion, a $27 million or 3% increase from our FY19 projected spending, and a $43 million or 4% increase above the FY19 GAA. The budget continues the demonstrated commitment to the administration, to our agency, and to keeping kids safe and families strong. Please let me highlight a few of the areas of interest. For staffing, House 1 includes continued support for significant investments in staff in DCF since 2015. The investment includes more than 1,600 new employees, to include social workers, supervisors, social work technicians, who, by the way, have been a godsend for our staff. Social work supervisors and area program managers and additional staff to provide appropriate management oversight and support. Projected placement growth, the budget has increased $4.9 million in additional funding for those placements, with an additional $1.6 million to cover the cost of LEAP Day. The budget also includes $2.7 million in projected spending increase to support expansion plans underway to enhance the existing network of family resource centers that began in FY19. These costs will annualize at an increase of $5 million over the 2 fiscal years. Unlike prior administration, the Baker-Polito administration has increased the foster parent stipend annually since taking office. This budget includes a 2% increase to foster parent care rates and clothing rates that would become effective on July of 2019. I can't stress enough how important this is to our foster parents. Foster parents are supportive and present as they navigate the reunification process. The modest costs that we provide to them to cover the expenses of care are critically important, that we continue to grow those over time, so that our families can do the best that they can to make sure that kids get to be kids and that they have support that they need going through tough times. This budget also includes $2.2 million in support for residential school rate increase that will support increases in the cost of tuition for kids in the department's care and custody who are placed in residential schools across the state. I remain firmly committed to advancing the work you and the administration has enabled us to do. Our strategy of addressing long-standing issues incrementally through the AILT process has proven to be the right fit as we strive to make sustainable systems and culture change. We continue to evolve as a data-driven agency, working in lockstep with information technology to increase capacity, and with our Office of Management and Budget Analysis staff now in their second year of leading a 6-week institute, training our field staff to use data as a management tool. This is one of the fun things we've done. we have a group that is called a Data Fellows team, and they are doing an annual intensive training over 6 months for a group of staff, about 80 staff each time, teaching staff from clerks all the way up the line in the agency to actually use data in their day-to-day jobs, to do analysis of major issues and trends in the local office. It's a lot of fun. They did their presentations last week. Child welfare is a difficult and critical work. Every day, our dedicated and hardworking staff navigates a complex array of safety and service needs and makes decisions that keep our kids safe. We are grateful forever to our social workers who work hard every day on the complex situations facing our children and families. While home removals across the state have decreased, the length of time for children in out-of-home care has increased, and that is something that we are working on. This summer, in partnership with the SEIU Chapter Local 509, Chapter President and I did visits to 9 area offices where some of those challenges of longer lengths of stay for kids in care have prevailed. Those 9 offices have struggled with placement demand and other concerns, and we continue to work with them closely to solve those problems. The partnership with our local 509 chapter has been a critical part of that process. We will continue to work with them and others on behalf of the Commonwealth's most vulnerable children. I want to also say that besides our social worker and our social work techs, we have an amazing staff of attorneys, of administrators, of program managers, of foster parents, adoptive parents, and others, providers who really partner with us each and every day to do this work. I am grateful for those partnerships, grateful for those relationships, and grateful for the hard work of the people in the Commonwealth who collectively care for our kids and families. And that includes your work as well. Each and every one of you has been a tremendous resource to the department and a tremendous support. I cannot thank you enough for all that you have done to support the work of DCF and to support the safety and well-being of the children of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And before we go on, I just want to acknowledge your work. I cannot think of a harder job in the Commonwealth. And I know it's not a perfect system. I know there are things that go wrong sometimes, but just knowing that the people at the top care so deeply about their mission and the children that they serve will all serve us. And I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Senator Friedman. It is challenging work every day, but it is a labor of love. We feel very strongly that we've come a very long way since the day I walked in the door, but we are not fooled that we have more work to do. And we continue to work at that every single day.
Thank you. Before we open questions, I'd like to welcome Rep. Liz Malia, the Assistant Vice Chair of Ways and Means. It's wonderful to have you in Arlington. Before we go on, as a gift for all of your service here, committee members and those people who have come to see them and the residents of Arlington, there will be no tickets issued today at meters, so everybody can relax, and so that's good. And then in about 15 minutes, I think there will be lunch served for, the committee members, and you're just welcome to, at your own pace, get some lunch, which is through the doors to my left, and up the stairs you will see a conference room. And if you can't find it, just follow the smell. Okay, I would like to open it up to questions now. Rep. Dykeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for all your incredibly good work. And I just want to echo the Senator's comments about the complexity of this work and the obvious progress that you've made and the heart with which you do your job. So thank you. And I'm going to ask a question here. It may be a little bit in the weeds, and my apologies if you don't have the details at your fingertips. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the stabilization piece. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues which I think you mentioned is the importance of keeping kids with their families whenever possible. And one of the line items that we look at in the budget is for family support and stabilization services, which had a pretty significant 6% increase in last year's budget. And I just got some really great numbers from my local DCF office saying that they've been able to provide a lot more families with those services already in this fiscal year, and 80% of those services went toward keeping kids in their homes who otherwise would have been outplaced. So that to me is, you couldn't have a better story than that.
Absolutely.
I did notice that in this year's budget, there's only a 0.9% increase in that line item. And I was just wondering if you had, for our consideration, any thoughts or, whether you could use more of an increase in that line item or anything that would be helpful for us in making decisions.
Yeah, part of what we're in the, I may have mentioned it just briefly in the testimony, that what we're engaged in is a little bit of analysis, because what we think is that the need for increase, there are a couple of ways that we are looking at the need to increase any services. And one is we want to do a little bit of a geographic understanding of where the service demands and needs are, and that's part of what our Services to In-Home Intact Families is looking at. We believe that for some portions of the state where there is less community-based services, we may need to build up a little bit more there and less in other places. We also have some flexibility in the budget that if we're underspent in other accounts, we're able to move that over and spend it on in-home. So I feel as if we can manage within the budget that we have. We're also doing some planning for the future. I anticipate that in the next 12 to 18 months, we will be in a position where we will be reprocuring our support and stabilization services. And then as we do that, we'll be looking at new models of service and at the distribution of services across the state. And as we do the assessment for that, we'll have an understanding of what our spending patterns are in more detail and a sense of what kinds of specific services we'd like to increase.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your testimony here today and for the work of your staff. And I was very happy to hear the resources and the attention you're going to put towards the kinship of foster parents. It's a huge issue with the opioid crisis that we're having. I don't think that there's a legislator that is here today or that serves that hasn't seen the chain reaction effect of that crisis. You've got grandparents now that have retired that are essentially raising their grandkids. And this is not a short-term issue. This is a long-term issue that's really a tragedy. And so anything that your office can do and that we can do, obviously, to support that network is hugely important, whether it be some sort of training programs or getting them to understand. I mean, they've raised their family, and then all of a sudden they kind of get hit with this load of hay, and they don't know really what to do. So thank you for the attention you're putting onto that. I think that's extremely important. Something that's been the focus of the legislature over the last 5 or 6 years relative to DCF has been the caseload situation, obviously, and we've had challenges with that in the past. I'm glad to see that number is decreasing, which is great, because obviously the individuals that are working with those families can have more of a focus with those situations that are so unique. Can you give me any kind of sense about that caseload number, where it is in comparison to other places around the country? Is Massachusetts in the reasonable mix of being on the low side, or are we on the high side? I mean, I know there's a contractual component that's involved there, but can you give me a sense of that average?
We've always been on the lower to moderate side of this equation. There are states in the country who are, I would say, are on the outlier, but there's more than one of them. There are probably half a dozen or so who are really outrageous. They're at 40, 50, 60 cases, and that come down periodically. Because we've had a caseload standard for some length of time, we feel very stretched when we hit 22, because we know that our staff can't do the work well at the caseload of 22. There are a few states out there who probably are lower than us, but most states that are doing reasonably well are in the same ballpark that we are.
And when we have challenges with that caseload, and again, I'm glad to see that it's going down, but when it starts to creep up, what is the essential challenge that comes with that? Is it the fact that individuals aren't able to give as much time and attention in the timely response? Right. Or, I mean, is that the big gap that happens there as that caseload starts to creep up, and it's the biggest concern is obviously being on top of those cases on a regular basis? Now they can give more time to individuals when they have less of those cases.
Yes, the real factor is time. And one of the things we try to guard as best we can is the time that social workers have to spend with children and families. There's a certain amount of their time that's administrative time, that's time sitting in court, all of those things which they don't have a whole lot of control over, which is why we want to keep the number as low as we can get it. But the biggest thing that I think helps keep kids safe and help families improve and strengthen their skills and their ability to be good parents is time to make sure that people are on track doing what they need, that people have the support they need. And that takes time. So when in an individual office, when caseload demand gets high because either there's a lot of cases coming in the front door, as we've watched opioids shift from community to community around the state over the last 4 years, we've seen in certain offices the volume of cases pop up for a period of time because opioids have hit in that community in a different way. So as we know, a lot of the opioid crisis, for example, hit down on the South Shore in the early years when we were back in 2015 and 14 and 16. As we've come to present, it's spread out much more across other parts of the state in a more aggressive way. So we see in the western part of the state challenges in our caseload. We have a process inside the department where we do a allocation. Our allocation is not static. We look at it every 2 weeks to take a look at what staff and what caseloads are in every single office. It's part of what's helped us to manage this so that we know when to move and when to add and some staff to a particular office because demand is getting high, caseload counts are going up, and that's part of how we've managed to keep it from bumping up too high in any community.
And you do that every 2 weeks with your staff?
Every 2 weeks.
Wow, okay. Thank you, Commissioner, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I certainly appreciate your testimony because at certain times, as Madam Chair did say, you're in what can be an unenviable position. And as you readily admitted, it's a labor of love. And I did have a couple of questions, but your thorough testimony covered it. So I just want to take this opportunity to highlight something I saw here on page 2 of your testimony. And it's something that I want to thank you for sincerely. I want to thank you, Commissioner Spears. I want to thank Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and everyone in your administration to see that it says that right now you're at 100% DCF social workers being licensed is unbelievable. It's great to know that there's such a commitment there to our children and our families. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your work.
Well, thank you. For me, I inherited this law from you all and at the time that it came in, but I have to say, for us and our staff who were anxious and afraid when they first started this process that they might not pass the exam, one of the things I reinforced to them was that our credibility was vital and that licensure was part of making sure that our workforce was credible to do their jobs. So it's an important value to me that our staff are licensed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you for your comprehensive testimony on the improvement initiative that your agency has done over the past couple of years. And as someone who is adopted in the Commonwealth, I appreciate the work that you have done with the Foster Care Caucus in the legislature. Your communication has been outstanding. I do have a question. I know during your testimony you talked about the new foster care families that have come on board in the Commonwealth. Are those new in addition families supplement, or are they supplanting foster care families?
That is a net gain. The 300 is a net gain. So we have about 300 as a net gain on the unrestricted foster home side and about 400 new kinship families over and above what we had 2 years ago.
Okay.
That I would say to you that given those increases, we would like to have more of both. So we've made really great progress, but we're not all the way where we want to be yet.
Of course. And to follow up on Representative Smola's question, I know a few years ago we had a conversation about my concern of social workers' time spent in their cars, especially those in the central part of Massachusetts when they are literally traveling hours from case to case. How is that going? Have hours in car been reduced in any way?
We've hired, this is another area where we've made progress, but we're not all the way there. We've hired about 108, we're somewhere right around that at this point. Social work techs is what's in the budget. And those social work techs, their primary responsibility is to support caseworkers in two functions. One is transportation, and the other is supervising visits. So that social workers' time can be freed up for them to do the things that require their skill sets. It has made a difference. It has helped tremendously. But we could use, we're not all the way there yet. We're still growing the pool of social work techs. We'll be increasing the number of technicians in the 2020 budget. We'll be growing that number a little bit further.
Is that region in central Massachusetts the largest one that a particular social worker has to travel?
No, it actually, even though the regions are, we have large geographic regions, our southern region is big because it goes all the way down to the Cape and the islands. Right. The west is big geography, central Mass is big geography. They're all pretty large geography. I think part of the challenge is where our recruitment of foster homes will make a difference and the recruitment of kinship homes will make a difference. Because kids, depending on the resource pool in the community that they live in, for those supports, our social workers may have to drive them further to do that. So travel can be anywhere from down the street to across the state. And for kids who are staying with grandma and grandpa, mom and dad may live in Lowell, grandma and grandpa may live on the Cape or in Pittsfield. So that transportation is important. It's why the technicians are so important to us.
And one last question in terms of the improvement initiative. Is there one that is becoming that you can assess as being a little more difficult for the agency to accomplish that the legislature can support with more funding or more aggressive legislation?
Well, I think as we, Senator Representative Dykema raised the in-home support services, we feel we're in good shape right now. But growing, we have, as we look forward, in my view, in our 2020 budget, we are in a good place. But we will have work to do as we do some analysis about what the reasons, where the resources are. We think that it may be, one of the questions may be about where do we need to develop capacity. Goes to the same work that we're doing interagency with EOHS on the treatment side. Where in the state are there pockets where there are less services than more? And we know that Central Mass, where we've added family resource centers, is one of the places where there's increased need for support in the community for families.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And just on the family resource centers, you mentioned in your testimony about expansion plans underway in the governor's budget. You spoke about a couple more. I'm just wondering if you could just comment on where those new family resource centers would be located.
I don't have them in front of me, but we were doing increases to about 5 right now in this fiscal year that we're currently in. We're increasing the size of 5 family resource centers. I think several of them are in Central Mass, Athol, et cetera, that we're increasing. And we're adding 2 centers, one in Taunton and the other I'm totally blanking on right now. But I will let you know, Senator Goby.
I would be remiss if I did not comment on an issue that is happening in my district with the Stetson home. And I'm sure that you're very well aware of some of the problems of late that have occurred there. And I do want to thank that we've had some meetings and folks from DCF have come out, including the contract manager, but there are some very serious safety issues. And just in context, the Stetson home has been in the town of Barre since 1899. So this is not anything new. It's been providing services for young boys since that time. It's in a very residential area. The town has always embraced the school. But there are some very serious concerns. And the only thing I just wanted to kind of put on your radar is that I expect that there will be more meetings coming up. I know that we're looking at one in a couple of months. And I think at that time it would be more appropriate if you attended that meeting rather than just and I don't mean just the managed con, but I just want to put that out there because I will be sending you an invite to the next meeting.
Senator Goby, I've particularly asked my assistant commissioner, who probably has not yet been in any of the meetings, to be engaged in this conversation. I know she was out at Stetson yesterday talking with the team there, and have asked her to pay focused attention to what's going on and to see, helping work with Stetson to see what solutions can be brought to the situation.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Commissioner Spears, first off, a credit to you for your leadership at DCF. Not many people could have been handed the deck of cards that you were handed when you came in and played them as successfully as you have. So first off, let me give you and your leadership team the credit that you will deserve for succeeding to the level that you have. The question that I have for you, ma'am, is relates to child advocacy centers. And I'd like to frame it this way. So as we know, the child advocacy centers are dealing with the littlest victims of the most horrendous crimes that we can imagine. And I'm interested to find out what support your agency offers to child advocacy centers throughout the Commonwealth, but I'm going to give it, like as I said earlier, framing, I'm going to frame it in the picture of being the ultimate homer. What we have down Cape Cod is we have a child advocacy center, Children's Cove. Children's Cove is at a point right now where they're coming to us in the legislature every single year for an earmark. And they have to because the County of Barnstable is slowly walking away from their past funding responsibilities. The District Attorney's Office is starting to slowly walk away from their funding responsibilities. And what we're left with is we're left with supporting this critical service for child victims and their families on Cape Cod through legislative earmark. This is no way to do business whatsoever. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to what support your agency currently offers so that we can maybe look going forward. As I speak with my colleagues in the Cape and Islands delegation, myself and Senator Sear have been working very closely on this, trying to find a way if we can bake in these supports through your agency to these child advocacy centers so that they don't have to come begging to us with hat in hand and they can instead focus on the important services they provide.
Yeah, and I think the Children's Advocacy Center's funding has been a difficult knot to untangle for folks for a while. One of the things that as I understand it, and I may not be accurate in this assessment, but as I understand it, there's a bit of differences of opinion between the CACs about how they would like to be funded and how they are funded. Some of them appreciate, like, and have built and grown their relationship with their local DAs. Others have seen what you've seen, which is a little bit of an erosion from their local DAs. And I think at this point it's probably time to sit down and talk further with, and I know we've started a conversation with folks. Right now, we do not have a line item that supports CACs separate from the earmarks that are passed by the legislature each year. We do believe that funding, and we're grateful for the earmarks for these programs, and we're glad that they get them each and every year because we're glad we see these as vital services for ourselves. So we're certainly interested in having the conversation about what are the options for how to do this in the future.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have one more question. You are hiring a lot of new social workers, and I'm just wondering, what level of support are they getting in, as they do their work, and what part of your kind of budget goes to ensuring that they are well supervised but also have the support that they need?
So there are a couple of places in our budget where we do that. When I came into the department, there had been some increases in the social work staff and the social work line item. We continued to grow that. One of the things that I observed very quickly after having come on board was that the management supports for the department had not grown for that, and we really didn't have adequate infrastructure to support decision-making by staff. So that the budgets in 15, 16, 17 did increase some of that as we went through, particularly the 16 budget. We were able to add management staff. So we increased the ratio of program managers to supervisors and workers, and we decoupled all of our area offices in early 2016. We had previously to that, since about 2012, had one director for every 2 offices. We now have one director, and we've institutionalized a position that we call an area clinical manager, whose job is to help do the clinical problem solving each and every day. So we've looked to do that. We've also added In past budgets, we've added specialized functions or increased the capacity of existing functions, including our medical functions. As many of you know, we hired a medical director. We've increased the number of nurses, and we've hired 30 medical social workers. We've also hired substance abuse specialists, and we doubled the number of those last year in the budget, as well as our substance abuse specialists, who we will be increasing under a federal grant this year. So those specialized functions are there, and the design of the way we use them is so that they can provide technical assistance, consultation on difficult cases for social workers. To me, it's very important that our social workers have the support they need. We're also rewriting our pre-service training. We're in the middle of that right now. We hope to have it done middle or later this year, depending on the time that our consultant takes. But we're really working on a new curriculum that's much more structured curriculum for our new social workers.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
When do you sleep? Rep Schmidt, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I hadn't realized, or maybe I knew but forgotten, that family resource centers are funded through DCF. And is there a line item for them? There is, yeah. I just wanted to comment that your family resource center in Fall River is doing fabulous work. I was just at a meeting last night where they were working with the folks from the Shannon Grant, funded by the Shannon Grant, and the folks funded by Safe and Successful Youth Initiative. And they were working together, breaking down those silos, and it's just great to see.
Our family resource centers across the state, this is like one of the, you have no idea. If you have not been to visit one, please go if there's one near you. This is one of the best things the Commonwealth has done. It is just, what the work they're doing is amazing. We had the Lawrence Center that in the fall during all of the gas explosion work was an asset. While their own building was affected, they also turned around and served as supports for people in the community, helping people to access clothing, food, shelter, all of that. And Holyoke during Hurricane Maria took in refuge. The number of things that these folks do is just incredible. We just are finishing a legislative report that we'll be sending on to the chairs of Children and Families and to Ways and Means. As you all get a chance to take a look at it, I think you should celebrate the success of this program, and we hope to continue to grow it.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, I can't thank you enough for coming to Arlington, for your presentation, and for all of the incredibly wonderful work you do for the Commonwealth. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you all for your support.
I would now like to ask Commissioner Stephen Florio, Massachusetts Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, to come up. Welcome, Commissioner. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Chair Friedman and Representative Sean Garibaldi, and respected members of the House and Senate Committee on Ways and Means. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Stephen Florio, the new commissioner for the Massachusetts Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Before I joined the Massachusetts Commission, I was the executive director of the Rhode Island Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing for 16 years, and I'm excited to bring my experience to Massachusetts. I've advocated for deaf and hard of hearing issues for over 25 years at the local, state, national, and international levels, including Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and of course, Massachusetts. Our Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 6, Section 191 through 199, provides for the Commission to provide advocacy focusing on human and civil rights system change. There's a lot of issues within the system that are barriers for deaf and hard of hearing access. Not just them, but I as a deaf person and American Sign Language user are in the same boat, and we face the same issues and require the same improvements for the quality of life, improvement of services, etc., to make sure that the existing services are more accessible to deaf and hard of hearing people. The third area is to come up with innovations, developing new service programs. Recently, for the past year, there's an expansion of 2 new substance use disorder counselors who are able to communicate and have licenses. We've trained 20 recovery counselors who are deaf themselves, fluent in American Sign Language. 16 are on the way of becoming certified as a large resource for us in the state of Massachusetts. Another area is promotion, accessible and public awareness, to raise public awareness. Training, in the past year, 132 trainings, deaf and hard of hearing people's rights, access to services, self-empowerment, self-determination as independent residents. Services, we have case management, independent living. We have 1,935 contacts with clients through the independent living services, 17,000 hours. 17,000 hours are spent with about 2,000 clients who are deaf and hard of hearing for their independent living services. Communication access, there are about 30,000 requests in the last 5 years, about the same number of requests, and currently 75% of the requests have been met. We need to increase our fill rate for interpreter services. Information and referral and resources is where we have expertise for education, healthcare, judicial, etc., and we work with partners in different state agencies. The Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, according to the Johns Hopkins research published in November 2011, about 20% or 1 in 5 people aged 12 and above have various degree of hearing challenges. That means in Massachusetts there's about 1.3 million people who have some hearing loss, and I'm sure you're familiar with those who are aging, maybe members of your family, elderly, 1 in 3 people over 70 have a hearing loss. Veterans is the number 2 disability for people coming home from the service. It's a large group. Deaf people have an opportunity. Deaf and hard of hearing services as language and cultural mediation for deaf and hard of hearing consumers with other state agencies. Other state agencies need assistance with communicating with the deaf and hard of hearing constituency. We have offices throughout the state: Springfield, Pittsfield, Plymouth, Westboro, and Boston. We have 45 FTEs, and 31% of the employees are deaf and hard of hearing. We also provide interpreter referral service, and the biggest part of that is healthcare services, access to healthcare services, and that's what we've been working on. We just started working in February. I just started working in February and the programs. I would like to commend our staff who make a difference, provide services to people who need the services. I will please refer to my written testimony about the accomplishments and the partnerships that the Commission has. We have a humongous potential for the next level of services for deaf and hard of hearing people. Fiscal 2020, Governor's H1 budget proposal is $6.1 million, and that would be level funding for the Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, including $1.8 million for deaf and hard of hearing independent living services that covers 8 regions throughout the Commonwealth. With your support, it will allow us to maintain our services and to maintain our priorities for health, resilience, and independence that are accessible to deaf and hard of hearing people. Thank you for your continued support for our agency, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. It's great to have you here, and welcome to Massachusetts. Sounds like you bring a lot of experience with you to the position. So I have a couple questions. So the governor's budget just level funds, so there is no new services, you'll just be maintaining existing services with that budget?
At this point in my 1-month service, yes. I'm sure that we will be evaluating the different programs and services we offer to determine where we need to move forward. Currently, we'd be working within the current budget.
Okay. And the access to healthcare services, is that the #1 issue that people face? Is there, you know, can you talk about what you think or see, given you've been here for a month, what you see as the sort of #1 barrier? Is it interpreters?
There are different levels of challenges. Healthcare access is really personal. Everyone needs healthcare services, everyone, and it impacts everyone. Some hospitals have very good plans, good services, and have the ability to identify who needs communication access. For example, interpreters or CART. Depends on the system. They have video remote interpreting services also. Some technology is available. Is it appropriate for all the patients, depending upon the situations? In the emergency room, in a doctor's office for regular one-to-one services, eye surgery. How can you watch an interpreter while you're having eye surgery? So there are very levels of challenges. It's a nationwide issue, not just a Commonwealth-wide, but we need to be able to meet everyone's communication needs in healthcare services.
Great, thank you. Rep. Malia?
I think I'm loud enough so that I can be heard by the community members. I think I'm really concerned about and interested in hearing a little bit more about services for those affected by the opioid epidemic. It's something I've worked on a lot, and I think one of the gaps in our treatment capacity has been looking at the needs of the deaf and hard of hearing community. And I'm just wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yes, thank you, Representative Malia. As I said earlier, we have 2 SUD counselors who will be licensed this year. Also, we have 16 recovery coaches that will become certified, and there's a growing number of people who will be able to help those who experience opioid addiction, and we're partnering with other departments to provide support for people who need treatment. We hope to see more of a positive result to help clarify the search for good recovery processes and treatment.
Thank you. I'm very, very, very happy to hear about the use of recovery coaches in that context. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome as well, Commissioner. Just had one question. For the past couple of months before that you were here, I've been in some communication with and it had to do with visor cards that would be available, and she's been great to work with, and I know that she was hoping when we were in communication of when a possible launch date might be for that. I know that I have police officers that are looking forward to that, as well as some organizations such as local Lions clubs that would be willing to help in getting those visor cards out. So I was just wondering if that was still happening, if you, and again, I know that you're new, you only been around, but if you had an idea when that would be happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Goby, for that question. I'm thrilled you asked. I'm very familiar with the visor card. It's a great tool to prevent communication breakdown with officers or firefighters or any situation involving police or fire. They're going out April 3rd this year at the police trade show, also through different community organizations, both labeled, but they will all be laminated. And we have a PDF that's available online that one can download to put it in their cars also. And definitely we will continue to disseminate them, spread awareness with the police departments, and we'll be working with them. I used to work for Rhode Island Commission for Hard of Hearing and the U.S. Department of Justice. Rhode Island Police Chief Association and the Disability Law Center and the Commission worked for policies and procedures to address hard of hearing and deaf issues throughout the state of Rhode Island. And it's one of the most successful tools that they've had to recognize the needs for communication access for deaf and hard of hearing people. Also empowering the police to know what to do next. And I think it can be very successful here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts also.
Thank you very much, and I agree. And as I mentioned, I know that it sounds like you're going to be okay for the funding for that, but I did also want to put out there that in my conversations with various Lions clubs around the state, they also would be very glad to partner to do what they can to, whether it's the lamination or whatever can be done. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of that.
Great, thank you. Contact our office. We'll be happy to work with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Florio, hello again. If you recall, I got to meet you outside the governor's office on the day that you got sworn in.
Yes, I recall. It's good to see you again.
Commissioner, I'm speaking to you as one of those veterans that is hard of hearing that you spoke earlier about. And I'm one of those fortunate veterans that through my insurance, the hearing aid that I wear right now, it costs $3,200 for one hearing aid. My insurance covers $1,700 and I pay $1,500 out of pocket for it. And that's only good once every 5 years. Quite obviously, quality hearing aids are a barrier, And I have a lot of friends in my district and beyond who are veterans who lost their hearing, and they're not really aware of the veterans' benefits that are allowed to them through the VA. And I'm wondering if you could explain to me if your office has any interoperability with the State Department of Veterans Services to help connect some of these hard of hearing seniors and veterans who may be able to access VA benefits so they can get the hearing aids that they need provided. If your office does any of this connection, could you please explain it to me, how it goes about?
That question is an excellent question. I wish I knew the complete answer to that as far as what historically the Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing has done. Hearing aids is an ongoing issue with insurance because they're expensive, $3,000 to $5,000 each. They're digital, they're modifiable, Bluetooth enabled, etc., and they're very necessary. The Office of Veteran Affairs is in the same building we are, and I haven't had an opportunity to meet with the commissioner yet, but we do have plans to meet and discuss the hearing aid issue. It's an ongoing effort. The cost of hearing aids and insurance covering it is very low. I think there's now, they cover up to $2,000 for children, adults not so much, and we need to improve that insurance coverage for hearing aids, but I will be working with Department of Veterans Affairs to see what kind of support we can provide to veterans.
It puts a smile on my face. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you so much, Commissioner, for coming and for your testimony, and I hope your tenure in the state of Massachusetts is a good one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will now hear from the Department of Transitional Assistance, Commissioner Jeff McHugh.
Good morning.
Welcome. Very happy to have you here, and thank you so much for your patience. I know we moved the schedule around a little on you.
Absolutely no problem. Highly educational. Thank you. I also, before I move into to my testimony, I would also like to say it's delightful to be in Arlington today, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out being a high school hockey player back in the mid-'70s, riding the buses up here to play against the Spy Ponders and play against the team coached by the legendary Coach Burns. The ride home was always a lot longer than the ride here. So I'm delighted to be here, though. Thank you. That was some years ago. Senator Friedman, Representative Gabali, and other distinguished members of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to provide an overview of our proposed budget investments. My name is Jeff McHugh, and I'm privileged to serve as the Commissioner of the Department of Transitional Assistance. The Department of Transitional Assistance serves 1 of every 8 people in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with a comprehensive system of assistance programs and supports. Again, I'm pleased to be speaking to you here in Arlington, a town which we have, as a department, a terrific relationship. Within a stone's throw, the Arlington Council on Aging works with the department as one of our nearly 80 and growing contracted SNAP outreach providers. These are community agencies which expand DTA's reach across the state. The team at the Council on Aging has jumped on the opportunity to engage their constituents about the food assistance resources available to them using the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program, and has campaigned to reach those who may fall into the SNAP gap. those who are accessing other services that might be eligible for a SNAP benefit. I proudly represent the 1,600-plus public servants who compose the Department of Transitional Assistance workforce, and I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity at this point to commend them on their services to the communities, especially given some of the challenges that we all experienced over the past year. During the Merrimack Valley natural gas disaster, DTA staff helped every day and was one of the first occupants at the Recovery Center, replacing SNAP benefits for more than 3,000 families that lost food in this disaster. More recently, our staff moved mountains during the federal government shutdown to ensure that every single client got February SNAP benefits, including 93% of our SNAP caseload that actually got those benefits just a bit early to meet their needs. Today, the department's in a good place due to its dedicated workforce as well as our improved business model, which has led to more efficient administrative work and more meaningful client engagement. While we've made great progress, there's much more to do. I come before the committee this year to highlight the department's ongoing commitment to combating multi-generational poverty with a two-generational approach. Governor Baker's budget includes $656 million in funding for the agency and significant reforms to streamline the TAFDC, Transitional Aid to Families with Dependent Children program. Before I jump into these proposed changes, I'd like to take just a minute to talk about some of the milestones that DTA has experienced over the last few years. Our largest program is the federally funded Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, known as SNAP. This program helps 1 in 9 families supplement their food budgets, serving more than 760,000 residents across the state who utilize SNAP. And these are primarily vulnerable families, those with children, elders, and persons with disabilities. Additionally, we administer the Healthy Incentives Program, HIP, which is now moving to a fully state-funded program. Since its inception in April of 2017, nearly $9 million in incentives have been issued to more than 54,000 SNAP households. HIP has been changed to a seasonal program to provide stability and to optimize resources during popular seasonal markets, with a pause from March 1st each year to May 25th, reopening on May 25th. We also do specialized work to serve communities in the state, including our increasing senior SNAP population, for which DTA opened a senior assistance office in Holyoke, serving the entire state, and pursued a waiver to decrease barriers for senior and disabled reporting requirements. Thanks to all of these combined efforts, between November of 2017 and November of 2018, Massachusetts saw a slight increase in the SNAP caseload, while the national SNAP caseload declined by over 7%. This increase in Massachusetts was primarily driven by a 4.5% increase in seniors in Massachusetts accessing the SNAP benefit. In addition to the work of our SNAP staff to improve direct client service, the department has made significant investments in an on-demand access model, prompting access from anywhere at any time by way of a client-facing mobile application and web portal called DTA Connect. Each month, online, clients make more than 5 million transactions through these systems. DTA also provides economic assistance programs and supports that promote and provide stability to low-income families in deep poverty and connects individuals with paths to engage in the workforce through the administration of 3 major economic assistance programs: our emergency aid to the elderly, disabled, and children, the state supplemental program, and our largest program that I referenced earlier, Transitional Aid for Families with Dependent Children. The Transitional Aid for Families with Dependent Children program provides financial help to families with children and pregnant women with little or no assets or income, as well as employment supports, child care, and transportation to these families. As of March of 2019, there are approximately 29,000 TAFDC families across the state of Massachusetts. It is primarily through reforms in TAFDC that the department has been working to disrupt multi-generational poverty and enhance economic mobility. These changes have included an agency culture shift, a focus on policy simplification, and engagement with partners to improve the service network for all that we serve. With the governor and legislature's support in the FY 2019 budget, we implemented research-informed policy changes that simplified program rules and incentivized work to better support clients. And we're already seeing results on this. We've seen an overall increase in the percent of cases closing for employment. And we've seen a corresponding decrease in the percent of cases that close for non-compliance with work requirements. This is through your assistance, through the reforms that you put in place last year. Thank you. In addition to our policy changes, DTA has been a key partner in the state's implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, working closely with labor and workforce development to increase access for DTA clients. As a result of this investment, the number of clients accessing career centers near their homes has doubled from 6 to 12% of all the customers walking through career center doors. Within the last year, we've also worked to re-procure 3 significant employment programs with a strong focus on outcome-based programming and pay for performance. And we've also engaged, and you may hear from this later, we've also engaged in a highly innovative partnership in the last year with the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission to provide work opportunities for our TAFDC clients with disabilities with the goal of increased skill development and economic stability. As a government assistance program, DTA's Program Integrity Unit is a critical component of our work. Over the past few years, DTA has taken steps to continue to improve compliance and program integrity efforts across the board, tackling violations from SNAP trafficking to misuse of economic assistance for unauthorized purchases. Additionally, the department has strengthened its program integrity data analytics team and capacity, enabling us to monitor and identify patterns in EBT usage, transactional history, and potential trafficking. As mentioned earlier, over the past few years, the Department of Transitional Assistance has undertaken an effort to reform and simplify the Commonwealth's Core Economic Assistance Program, TFDC. The 2020 budget proposal put forward by Governor Baker builds on these efforts, builds on the work that was put in last year, with a strong emphasis on simplifying and streamlining program rules and requirements, better incentivizing and supporting employment activities, and trying to ease the cliff effect during the transition for our clients, for our families, from public benefits to self-sufficiency. The proposed reforms are also designed to help meet the state's demand for skilled labor by enabling and empowering recipients of public benefits to move into meaningful employment and aligning rules with that of all other public benefit programs. The governor's proposal includes one component that removes the first vehicle asset limit for TAFDC families currently in place, which is involves the value of a car with a value in excess of $15,000. Reliable transportation is a primary barrier to low-income families attaining employment, and is particularly critical in more rural parts of the state. Ownership of a reliable vehicle has been linked to improved employment outcomes for parents and improved health, nutrition, and education outcomes for children. The current $15,000 first vehicle asset limit for TAFDC is truly arbitrary. Removing it will bring the TAFDC vehicle policy in line with other public benefit programs. Our budget also proposes to eliminate a benefit reduction for families in shelter that makes it difficult for those families to accrue resources to become housed and to work. That reduction can be for up to half of the total benefits these clients are eligible for. The proposed is in line with FY19 budget changes that, again, thanks to the governor and your leadership, has eliminated a comparable homeless deduction for individuals that receive the EAEDC benefit. Last, but very much not least, we are proposing to repeal the family cap exclusion rule and to count the people and count the income. The governor's FY20 budget proposal repeals the 1995 family cap exclusion rule, as research has shown that family caps are ineffective in reducing subsequent births and instead exacerbate poverty. The budget proposal would also eliminate the exclusion of SSI recipients from a TAFDC household, enabling the program to count the people and the income of all adult household members while calculating this benefit. This would align TAFDC countable income rules with the rules of all other public benefit programs in the Commonwealth, which is a key goal of DTA in all proposed rules. Also included in our budget, and this goes to a point that was made by Representative Smola earlier, as well as referenced in Representative Malia's comments. Also included in our budget is a joint proposal with us and the Department of Early Education and Care to provide child care for working relative caregivers receiving TAFDC, which we expect to be implemented not next year, but as early as this year, using funds available to us. This is a population, largely grandparents, who have stepped in for kids, largely impacted by opiate-related challenges. These individuals will now be able to lean on child care as they work and as they step in for their kids around opiate challenges. Since 2015, DTA has seen a steady increase in the number of grandparent caregivers in the TAFDC caseload caring for their grandchildren when their parents are not available. Providing this support will enable caregivers to go to work, will promote stable family-based placements for children, which research has demonstrated reduces trauma and improves outcomes. All in all, DTA's 2020 budget seeks to further untangle convoluted public benefits policies to ease the process by which people we serve, and for our own staff to be able to explain those benefits and processes. Furthermore, this critical work will not only better prepare families to achieve economic stability, but will also support Massachusetts' continuing workforce development efforts. I thank you for your past support, and I respectfully request your full support of these changes as we look forward to a continued partnership as we strive to serve the most vulnerable citizens of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I really appreciate your testimony and coming here. I have a few questions.
Sure.
So as part of the lifting the cap, I believe, the governor has proposed to, you talked about including SSI benefits in the calculation and determining eligibility. So SSI recipients have severe disabilities and they've been determined unable to do substantial work. So that's correct, right? I mean, that's my understanding of
yes,
SSI.
That's correct.
Okay. So how would this proposal help families?
The proposal in its totality, Senator, would afford a number of individuals who are impacted by this are not currently counted as members of their case. So if an individual is currently receiving SSI, they are not recognized as a member of the case, and they do not receive benefits as a member of the case. Their SSI serves on its own, and they are not, those assets are not counted in any way. What we are proposing, in the interest of simplifying and making some level of equity with other programs for which SSI is counted, or for which similar programs like veterans benefits or RSDI is counted against the grant. We would bring these individuals, just the adults SSI, into the grant. We would count them as a member of the grant. Under this proposal, and against the backdrop of the other reforms we're talking about, some families actually would see an increase in the benefits they receive. We would see a substantial number of people also receive some level of loss associated with this. They would see a reduction in their TAFDC. We would see a number of people actually see their TAFDC case close.
Because they would lose eligibility.
That is correct.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. So my understanding is that if you have SSI and you have 2 children, the children are getting TAFDC.
That is correct.
So will give you, so it's your SSI plus the children. So if we take your SSI away, what's going to be counted? I'm a little...
Well, it's more that the SSI is brought into the calculation of the grant. So the individual themselves would actually be recognized as a member of the grant, and those assets, that income will be counted as well.
I guess I'm just having trouble understanding how that would help families who had members under that were receiving SSI. I'm trying to understand how that would.
Senator, this is my 3rd year bringing this proposal to the Ways and Means Committee. It has not met with your acceptance from you and the committee from the last 2 years. We bring it forward as a proposal that we think seeks to simplify some of the policies associated with accessing benefits. Part of this, and I think it's evidenced by what we brought forward last year and this year, is what we're trying to do is try to identify a navigable road for our clients and for our own staff to be able to interact. I've been in this job for 4 years. I think that one of the things that I'm committed to do is to try to remove some of the nooks and crannies associated with programs and really go at the cliff effect in such a way that we allow people to appropriately navigate from their own situation into self-sufficiency. I fully acknowledge that coming with this involves some setbacks for individuals financially in being able to move through the program.
I mean, I think when we're talking about food insecurity, especially food insecurity for families and children, we need to make sure that what we do has no effect on their ability to provide food. And I think, that's what the concern is. And, I also worry about this notion of equity and fair, bringing them in line with other benefits. I don't think any of the benefits that our veterans or other groups that have, where SSI is counted as an asset, they ain't living the high life, okay? And the notion that we would make poorer families poorer for equity's sake, to me, just flies in the face of who we are as a Commonwealth and what would make sense in ensuring that people actually have the basic needs they need, basic needs so that they can be part of the workforce and part of the community. And so I get very worried when I hear equity, incentives, and I know this is certainly not personal to you. It's just I feel very strongly that when I see this kind of thing, my antenna has to go up. I know we've rejected it many times in the past, and I'm just wondering why it's appropriate to propose it again.
I bring it forward to be able to look at the package in totality. Again, it would be, I think it would be remiss not to look at something that, and to flag something that I think is a bit of an aberration, a little bit of a bump in the road relative to some level of consistency and being able to identify a clear route to move from poverty to self-sufficiency. I bring it forward, Senator, with my eyes wide open from the context of appreciating how this has been embraced by the committee in the past.
Yeah. Okay, and I just, reducing poor people's benefits for the sake of consistency, and it just, to me, feels...
Senator, I don't come before you as anybody seeking to bring any hardened policy to the table. I think I look at the department's track record over the last couple of years and the work that we have done to be able to expand access to food security, to be able to move more people into meaningful jobs, not just any job, but meaningful jobs where they can effectively move beyond public benefits with truly good outcomes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I just wanted to take a minute first to congratulate you on the HIP program. I think that's incredibly successful. But I'm curious as to why we have that 2-month gap.
I think the short answer, Representative, is that I can't be in violation of state finance law. This is a program that started as a relatively, and many members of the committee know this, but this is a program that started as a fairly small pilot in Hampden County, moved forward to be part of we were able to secure a federal grant to be able to put the program in place. The program has grown by leaps and bounds. My interest, Representative, in being able to oppose some kind of boundaries of seasonality has come out of the fact that I can't be somebody overseeing a program that overspends its budget. And I also, I know a couple folks today have talked about, the Attorney General referenced the respect that they have for the farming community. I've grown to have a similar respect for the farming community. And one of the things that I've tried to do with the seasonality is try to flag with farmers early when the program might be up and running and when we might try to take a pause, because I recognize that for planting patterns and hiring folks that we need to give people a heads up relative to that.
Okay, and if I might, is there any possibility of additional federal grants, or is it strictly state operated now? We're not looking at federal.
Representative, I've been to that well. There are 5 states operating with what's called a FENI grant, which gave us the money to establish this. Massachusetts spending pattern in this area is about 600% higher than the next state behind us in terms of spending. And one of the reasons for that is the program itself. We took the step to actually load the ability to accrue an incentive onto the EBT card itself. So we made it easy for clients to be able to go into a farmer's market or deal with a mobile market or to work with a CSA and be able to access benefits utilizing their card and be able to secure that incentive. Other states, nobody's done that.
Okay, so if I might, just so I understand on the card, do we know if that money is fully utilized or is it remaining?
What we've been able to see, Representative, from our analytics is that the HIP program right now reaches about 6% of our caseload. Okay. So only about 6% of our caseload is venturing into farmers markets and utilizing the benefits. Most individuals that are participating in HIP are using their up to pretty much their maximum monthly incentive. But what we're also seeing is that we're seeing people get their incentive posted to their card, and then usually the incentive doesn't have to be spent at the farmer's market. And what we are seeing is clients who are participating in HIP are effectively taking care of their fruits and vegetable needs at farmers markets, loading the incentive on their card, and then heading to the farmers market, not to the farmers market, but the big box, and actually taking care of their shopping there. Those incentives do not have to be spent at the farmers market.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, if I can shift gears just for 1 minute, if I can shift to Mass Hire.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to if there is a specific age group that accesses assistance in finding employment more than another. And I guess my question more is 50 and older, and is there any specific program for people? Because, we have it, and I'm sure everybody here finds that the older workforce or the aging workforce has those wanting to enter the workforce have a more difficult time, and I'm curious whether you see that and what type of incentives there are for them and programs for them to assist them.
It's a great question, Representative. I would say that the number of individuals that are accessing career services assistance right now tend to be less senior, but it's something we have noted specifically, and we certainly want to make sure that our entire caseload is in place. Our entire caseload is being supported in this area. One of the things we have what's called an ISA, an intergovernmental service agreement with all of our career centers. So we support them by transferring dollars to deal with some base costs. Or as a partner in this effort, we underwrite some fixed costs associated with that. Last year, what we also built in was a merit component to be able to recognize some high-performing career centers who are actually doing really good work with departmental clients. It's our goal in this next session when we redo our ISAs to really also look at subpopulations and to put an emphasis on those being served, and seniors are on the list.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
I don't mean to infer 50 and over necessarily fall into the senior category, but we certainly are looking at.
We have to face reality.
This is true, sir.
Hi, Commissioner.
How are you, Representative?
Doing great. I want to commend you on your work on trying to close the SNAP gap. As you know, there are 1.5 million people receiving Mass Health, which has a very similar eligibility to SNAP, and there are about half that are receiving the SNAP benefits. I was pleased that you noted the great work you're doing with respect to seniors, to really target seniors that are in that gap, and also investigating why exactly there is such a large gap. We could have twice the SNAP population if everybody was eligible and wanted that benefit. Can you explain what else you're doing now? So, as you know, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is common application, so that when people are applying for one, they're applying for another. And I know you've undertaken some steps to move in that direction. Can you explain what you're doing now, and then also whether there are funding requests in this budget that you anticipate using for that effort, and whether or not they're sufficient?
The funding relative to the common client access system is actually loaded within the executive offices, would not reside in our budget, but we are, that really is the end game, as we've discussed, Representative, that the ability of clients to actually make application of Mass Health, and at the time they apply for Mass Health, to afford them the option of saying whether they want the Mass Health application to serve as a SNAP application as well. There are some nuances, some differences between the program, but actually just populating one application, and at the end of this, asking if performing some kind of eligibility test at 10,000 level to make sure that they're eligible. They'll probably have to answer about 2 or 3 more questions. Then it will be transmitted to us, and effectively will be an active SNAP application. That is the goal, and that is one of the more immediate deliverables that we are pursuing with respect to the common client ID, the common client system, excuse me. But I would say in the interim mode, I think we're doing a number of things. I referenced earlier the number of SNAP community partners we have. We have 80 and growing, And in the last 2 years, we have doubled the number of councils on aging that we have identified as SNAP partners. These are individuals that not only assist individuals in signing up for SNAP, but actually are in a position to receive reimbursement from the federal government for those efforts. So it's 80 and growing. Just in the last year, and that's on the senior end. On the other end, which is critically important, we also now have these community partner agreements with the school systems in Chelsea, Everett, and Brockton. And so we're using these as an experiment to work with the school systems to be able to complement some of the work that's being done around school meals, but also to be able to make sure that individuals get access to SNAP at the entire continuum. Right now, more specifically, and I would acknowledge that the SNAP gap is still substantial. But since we've been working at this for about a year and a half, we've brought it down by about 130,000 individuals. We continue to work with it. Even the 699,000 individuals who we've identified in the existing SNAP gap, about 60% of those individuals have received benefits from us before. So they know how to access SNAP benefits, and they have some sense of the system. I think probably the biggest tonic that we can provide relative to this is the fact that we continue to do our work in a very timely way. 4 years ago, 10,000 cases a month were closing because we weren't getting to them in time. Those translated to 10,000 families on the weekend pushing their carriages through the stores and running their cards and nothing on those cards. Unacceptable. Disgusting. That doesn't happen anymore. I think the steps we've taken to rebuild trust in the system has brought people back. It's probably our best advertisement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I did want to thank you as well for your work on the Food Policy Council. For my colleagues that are here, DTA has a seat at that table, and it's the commissioner that comes to those meetings all the time himself, and I do appreciate that. And also, just to go on Representative Walsh's comments, HIP, as you know, is one of my favorite topics.
Absolutely.
And I do appreciate all that you have done for that. And I think that you're probably aware that there has been, I filed a bill on the Senate side, and Representative Mark, to make HIP part of statute, so that we don't go through this, so that we can have an expansion of the program. And obviously, that would be something we would need to work with you on.
Yes.
But I know that you've been very, very supportive. I just had one question. When you were just commenting about going into the schools, a couple of the schools and pilot programs, I know that many of the colleges and community colleges in my district have food pantries on them. Are you doing the same thing at that level as well to reach out?
We are engaging college campuses now relative to this in a number of different ways. We are pursuing the opportunity to have college campuses. We have a good relationship with the community college system now, and we are pursuing opportunities to make them partners as well. We have relaxed and looked at certain innovations. We pursued a couple of waivers that make it easier for some of the students in danger of homelessness or are hungry to be able to have more access relative to SNAP on college campuses as well. We're engaging also Aramark. We're engaging some of the food vendors, looking at ways in which we can do some things differently. There's some innovative things across the country that have afforded where certain food contract, like the Aramarks and the others of this world, have actually been willing to accept SNAP on campus. And we're looking at all kinds of options relative to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Commissioner, you know, the cliff effect has been pretty frustrating to employers down in New Bedford and Fall River. And they think it's pretty neat that you've listened and have taken some constructive action to reduce the effect and to incentivize people receiving benefits to work longer hours and to get back on their feet faster. So I just wanted to thank you from, on behalf of employers for what you've done.
Thank you, sir. Representative, it was very helpful. Some of our cliff effect work effectively came, and the gentleman's name escapes me, but it was an employer that you had introduced me to.
Joe Amaral.
Yeah, that ran his company and could not understand when he went to people and tried to offer them promotions or tried to offer them additional hours, why they were turning him down. And not all of the cliff effect variables are within our control. There's a lot of federal things that are involved, but we're making a lot of noise and creating a lot of static with our federal partners to be able to move this. There's a big emphasis at the federal government to promote work and to promote the value and dignity of work. To do that, there needs to be meaningful reforms relative to the cliff effect and to ensure that programs interact with each other better than they do now. So thank you very much, Representative.
One follow-up question just from Rep. Livingston. You talked about that there are the efforts that you are doing to close the SNAP gap, and I think some of them were programmatic, like maybe IT efforts. Is that included for FY20, that work that needs to be done, is that included in the governor's House 1 request, the money to continue to do that?
That money is housed within a request within the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So that work is, the initial phase has been completed, which is effectively a contractor was brought on board to identify the challenges, put together a roadmap. That has currently been completed and being finalized at the Secretariat level. The next step will be actually going out to procure an integrator to be able to put the program in place. And my understanding is those funds are in place.
So those funds are in places from H. Okay.
Yes.
That's great. I do have one more question. So there was a small grant increase in FY19 for I think about a quarter of the caseload for TFDC. I think you increased a little bit, but I also know that the last across the board increase was in I think
2002.
Okay. Has there been any administration discussion about increasing the grants, and especially because I think the caseloads are down? So have you thought about increasing those grants given the rise in the cost of living?
No, Senator, the reference you made last year was that really the first grant increase that has happened since 2002 was part of the reforms from last year. If you recall, the benefit level for individuals that were work required was 2.75% less than that of individuals who weren't work required. So we did promote equity relative to that. We are currently reviewing the grant level. Again, there's a lot of moving parts to this, Senator, in that the scheduled increases in the minimum wage put significant challenges on the grants. As the minimum wage goes up, it actually works to reduce people's eligibility relative to that. So we're looking at a number of variables, and again, looking at it within the construct of the cliff effect. We want to have a meaningful road for people to move to poverty to self-sufficiency. As thoughtful and as appropriate adjustments of the minimum wage are, sometimes it has a corresponding boomerang effect to be able to push sometimes ability for people to work more hours. Again, calls back some of the questions that the representative raised before.
Okay, so it's something that you're looking
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
and trying to, okay, great. Ooh, I look forward to continued discussion.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the? No, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you very
time. I
much.
really appreciate you coming
Much
and
appreciated.
all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge that Senator Lovely has joined us. Welcome. from the Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, Commissioner Tony Wolf. Welcome.
Thank you. Can I just ask a favor that we do this in August when the room is not so cold?
I know. Yeah, welcome to spring in New England. And you don't want to be in the town hall in Arlington in
No,
August.
I don't want to be in the town hall in
No,
Arlington. All right,
no.
so be it.
No.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. Again, I want to acknowledge Vice Chair Friedman and Representative Golick and other distinguished members of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. As you've heard, I'm Tony Wolf, and this is the second time I'm in front of you, and I promise this time I'm going to be a lot less nervous. So I'm really eager to have a conversation with you. Prior to my appointment as commissioner, I ran a nonprofit agency in Metro West serving people with psychiatric disabilities. I have had the pleasure of seeing people really grow and recover in those 36 years, so it was really an honor for me to work there. In addition, I've really also come from a family lens, and so I was very thrilled to work with Commissioner McHugh and on a project that he had mentioned, thinking about families and family-informed services. And thanks to the work that I have done, I co-authored with several colleagues, Dr. Joanne Nicholson and Dr. Kate Biebel, on creating options for family recovery, a provider guide focusing on parental mental health. So again, my experience comes from really understanding people from a lived experience point of view, as well as that parental lens that I think is really important. So today I want to refresh perhaps your thinking about MRC, and I'm going to use MRC instead of Mass Rehabilitation Commission so that you understand that it's just a shorter way of saying it. And what I think is really important is that we're beginning to shift the paradigm for people with disabilities. I think Commissioner McHugh talked about poverty. People with disabilities experience poverty. They experience a host of issues, and we want to focus on the strengths of individuals. We want to focus on the abilities of individuals. I think that what's really important here is that we're beginning to really see a shift in the Commonwealth around thinking about people with disabilities, particularly in the workforce, and we want to maintain that. MRC develops strong relationship with employers, and we have been thrilled to have employers here in the Commonwealth who are eager to hire people with visible disabilities as well as invisible disabilities to really encompass a more diverse workforce. In addition, one of the things that you may also know is that we also focus on people focusing on independence. And we have a number of people that we are currently working with that are moving out of institutions. It is heartbreaking when you visit a nursing home and you see somebody with a brain injury due to an accident and they're 30 years old and they're sitting in a nursing home. And so our obligation and commitment is to make sure that people leave those nursing homes in the community with a quality of life and with independence. We also really want to focus on the fact that we have really excitingly supported over 1,000 individuals who have acquired brain injury and are now in the community. Through our vocational rehabilitation division, that's the services that we provide focusing on employment, we've increased training and education and encouraging everyone to participate in the workforce. And I want to just speak to the fact that people with disabilities are important employees. And I wanted to acknowledge that although perhaps some of our people with disabilities are on Social Security disability income, that does not preclude them from going to work. And many of our individuals want to go to work. Historically, one of the challenges that MRC has had is the fact that we, particularly in the VR division, is level funded federal dollars. And what we've been experiencing over the last number of years has been what I'm calling the erosion of federal dollars. And so what has happened is, as our federal funding has leveled, we all know that cost of living has increased, leases, salaries, and so forth. And that has eroded what I'm calling the federal base. So because of that federal base, in the past, MRC received what's termed reallotment dollars from the federal government. These were dollars that were designed for one-time opportunities within the fiscal year. And because of that federal erosion over time, MRC decided to use those dollars for operational costs. What that has led was a fiscal challenge for MRC. To give you an example of the reallotment dollars that we had received, in 2017, we received 7.5. In the year that I arrived, in FY18, we received 1.8. So again, that's a 75% decrease on dollars that we really should not have used for operational needs. So as I began as MRC Commissioner, I faced what I would call pretty serious financial challenges. My timing was not the best. Nevertheless, we really needed to look at what we needed to do. In addition, we also had the Rehabilitation Services Administration conducted a federal audit at the same time. And that audit really has become our Bible in many ways because it really dictated some of the MRC internal control issues that we had, our financial management challenges that we were experiencing, and our service authorization process to get people in the door. So, in addition to using using reallotment dollars for operational funds and our federal erosion happening, we also have been experiencing a higher demand. In addition, the Workforce and Opportunity Act has required mass rehab to serve youth 14 to 22 years of age, and that money has to be federally funded by 15% of our current federal allotment. That requires then 15% going to our youth, which is a good thing. The challenge, though, is that we still have to maintain our general population services, and we want to maintain our general population services. So you can see the multitude of challenges that faced MRC. So most importantly, there was little fiscal transparency and no strategic plan to address MRC's fiscal sustainability. MRC, as I just shared, was in a fiscal challenge. But coming from the Bronx, what you do is you roll up your sleeves and you dig deep. And so MRC leadership did that. We developed immediate and long-term strategies to control spending. We developed best practices to support sustainability and strengthen the agency moving forward. We did that through fiscal transparency, and it became a key to this endeavor, with management on all levels receiving budget information for some for the first time who had been there for many years. And most importantly, we went out and talked to our staff and held over 11 listening sessions so that our staff understood our fiscal landscape. And we asked them to help us. Believing in the participatory change process, I asked staff to offer their expertise and assistance to begin to look at how we were going to resolve the challenges that we were facing. I cannot say enough my gratitude to the dedication of MRC staff who assisted to modify current practices and have implemented robust monitoring and internal control processes. I am proud to say today that we've righted the ship, but I could have only done that with the help of the administration and you. I am incredibly grateful to all of you. I thank Governor Baker, Secretary Sudders, and each and one of you for investing in MRC this year, and we were able to continue our important work. A supplemental appropriation of $10.1 million has allowed us to continue to provide services to all the individuals we're currently seeing. And I cannot say enough the $10.1 million supplemental. Just to put this in context, MRC has traditionally only received $10 million in state dollars year on year. For us to receive a 10.1 for the supplemental, I am incredibly grateful to you, and I thank you on behalf of every consumer that's here. The budget allows us to have highly qualified staff and direct service providers to meet the needs of our consumers. and the budget has strengthened MRC's operations and appropriately aligned state and federal dollars. So, in addition to sustaining the boat and keeping it afloat, we also had some accomplishments, and I want to talk a little bit about that. MRC has provided over 41,000 residents and processed 86,000 Social Security disability claims during fiscal 2018. For many of you know that in addition to our vocational rehabilitation division and our community living division that focuses on independence, we also support our disability determination division. The vocational rehabilitation division served 24,000 people on the path to employment, and I'm proud to say that we are currently serving over 5,000 youth aged 14 to 22. And our community living division, the division that supports people with independence, has served over 15,000 individuals with disabilities who are now living in the community. Our community living division is comprised of a variety of programs, supports, and services that address the diverse needs of adults and youth with disabilities. MRC collaborates with Mass Health and the Department of Developmental Services to manage residential and community-based programs. These programs assist individuals who, as I shared, have been in nursing homes and facilities and now living in the community. MRC has also provides an array of assistive technology, devices, and services, such as home modification loans and vehicle modifications. And these are large ticket items, nevertheless have huge impact for individuals and their families. It has allowed people to maintain their employment and to live in the community. Each year, approximately 700 individuals benefit from the assistive technology services, and that includes about 250 home and vehicle modifications. And as I mentioned, MRC also supports our disability determination division, and we are really thrilled to say that we maximize the quality and timeliness of eligibility determinations for Social Security income and Social Security disability public benefits to help individuals achieve total independence. I'm really proud to say that this year, Massachusetts recently received a public service award from the Social Security Administration for extraordinary service to the American public. And in fiscal 2018, MRC processed 86,000 Social Security disability claims, exceeding the federal benchmark for timeliness and quality. This is because of the diligent work of the staff of MRC, and I cannot say that enough. We also, in looking at one of our accomplishments, we also developed a consistent functional assessment that allows all VR offices to use the same tool to determine eligibility and to support people coming through our doors. One of the challenges of every agency is standardization across the offices, and this is one way to ensure that people who are coming in our doors are receiving the same tool and the same support so that people can become eligible for services. This data will inform how to tailor services to better meet the unique needs of each individual seeking assistance from MRC. And this data will also help us in determining the appropriate caseload size for each VR counselor to improve services. Now, in addition to keeping the boat afloat and creating accomplishments, there have been some new initiatives that I want to talk about. First of all, we really believe in the partnership across state agencies, and we recognize the importance of working collaboratively with our partners to identify best practices, create new service models, and leverage our shared expertise and state and federal dollars. As Commissioner McHugh mentioned, this year we're partnering with the Department of Transitional Assistance on a new initiative called Empowering to Employ. This program was designed to better engage DTA clients with disabilities who have not worked with MRC before. As the experts for employment with people with disabilities, we provide specialized employment supports that were not previously available to them through the DTA programs or their vendors. As part of this initiative, DTA offices in Brockton, Quincy, and Lawrence have MRC vocational rehabilitation counselors embedded in their offices, dedicated on-site services. Early feedback has been very positive, and one client reported to us that has said that she has regained hope and purposefulness. And she comments, people don't understand how important and beneficial it is for someone with disabilities, especially mental illness, to be able to work. I am proud to report that this short period of time, we have reached 99 individuals through this initiative and are embedding this into our ongoing work. Another partnership that I'm also really excited to discuss with you is our partnership with the Department of Mental Health. During this fiscal year, DMH launched its redesign of what is called Adult Clinical Community Services, better known in the field as ACCS, which is integrated with the healthcare system and meets an increased demand for services. The goal of this redesign is to offer active and assertive engagement for DMH clients, which will improve health and behavioral health outcomes for the individuals we serve. For many individuals living with a mental health diagnosis, employment not only represents the result of recovery, but it's also the pathway to recovery. Employment has been shown to improve mental and physical health for all persons and improve standard of living, strengthening community living ties, a sense of purpose and meaning for each person. And in addition, it is critical for the road to recovery, as it is for all of us. We are very proud to be a partner in the redesign of this adult clinical community services program. As in July 1, we will be supporting approximately 1,200 individuals to achieve education and employment goals coming from the Department of Mental Health. Through our network of providers and our counselors, individuals will have access to a broad continuum of vocational rehab services, as well as Clubhouse and other employment resources offered by the Department of Mental Health. We've done this by creating a new model of service, a service that is where we are again embedding our counselors where the consumers are living. MRC also has significantly strengthened our partnership with the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. MRC VR counselors are actually co-located in Southbridge at their Mass Hires Career Center, serving individuals with disabilities. In addition, we have counselors throughout the Commonwealth holding what we're calling office hours at Mass Hire to support people with disabilities. Again, it is our opportunity to be able to leverage the support and expertise of all state agencies and ultimately minimizing duplicating services. In collaboration with families and youth, MRC is now offering, as I mentioned, work exploration services across the Commonwealth to students as early as 14 years of age. MRC has a presence in every public high school, and most importantly, before they complete high school, MRC and our partners provide workplace readiness training and counseling to support enrollment in post-secondary education and the opportunity to work to change the paradigm for people with disabilities. MRC, in partnership with the Mass Department of Public Health and the Executive Office of Elder Affairs and the Brain Injury Association of Massachusetts, has received a $300,000 grant for the next 3 years, focusing on what we're calling bridges between. People with disabilities are also impacted by the opioid crisis. The project aims to build connections between the traumatic brain injury community with that of the substance use disorder community, and strengthen services for families and individuals living with both traumatic injury as well as substance abuse. And I can personally say that there are very little services for people with brain injury and substance abuse. And we're very proud of being able to have been awarded this grant and pilot a program that connects program graduates with TBI, what we're calling traumatic brain injury, to programs. So where do we go from here? Well, we really looked at ourselves, and we had the opportunity in the past year with the support of the Executive Office to conduct an extensive business process redesign. Through this work, we assessed our current organizational structure and identified opportunities for improvement, which includes streamlining and creating efficiency processes. We have prioritized these opportunities based on feedback from our consumers, our workforce, and community stakeholders. With the development of a 3-phased, robust roadmap, we are laying the groundwork to strengthen MRC. We will align our organizational structure with a goal of strengthening consistency and visibility throughout the agency, enhanced internal controls, and better alignment of our operations to our mission. And I'm very proud to say over this last year, we've also strengthened our relationship with our frontline staff, represented by SEIU Local 509, and have been really working with them to really talk about this business process redesign. In order to strengthen and integrate services across Mass Rehab, we will implement the 7 agency objectives identified in this business process redesign. They are consumer experience, which should be the key, staff experience, efficient processes, data-informed decisions, service integration, communication, and partnerships. Through the lens of these objectives, MRC has identified over 30 opportunities of improvement outlined for the next 36 months. I am eager to fortify MRC and the services we offer to benefit first and foremost the people we serve, our consumers. In closing, again, I want to tell you how much I've appreciated the supplemental and your support. And I ask you also to support the governor's budget proposed that allows MRC to continue to provide the comprehensive services and supports for individuals living with disabilities and strengthening our financial sustainability. That word I've been using over and over again. As an agency, we have to be financially stable. And at the same time, we need to build an agency that's agile. The people we serve are changing. The trends of our populations are changing. We need to do it as well. I really thank you for your attention today, and I'm eager to work with you to shift the paradigm for people with disabilities in the Commonwealth. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thanks for all the work you're doing. And it's great to see you partnering with other agencies, and I think that's a great model. So thank you. I'd like to open to questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thanks so much for your heartfelt testimony. I really appreciate hearing throughout your testimony, you talking mainly about your staff, the great work that all of you do together, the core mission of what you're leading in terms of the constituents that you serve. It really showed how much you value the work that you do and how important it is to you to keep at the focal point of your mind who it is you're serving. And that's something that I know is very important to each and every one of us. You talked about your testimony about the fiscal constraints that you're operating under. And I just kind of want to flush that out a bit. I know the federal dollars evaporated in fiscal year 19 in many ways, and we were able to work with you, or this committee was able to work with you in adding that $10 million in a supplemental budget. Obviously, the future in terms of the fiscal outlook with the federal government does not look like a rosy picture. You know, we don't have a crystal ball. How can we best work with you when it comes to the fiscal condition of MRC in terms of moving forward?
So it's a great question, and thank you so much for acknowledging it. You know, I want to speak to, this is via our agencies across the country. This is not just Massachusetts. Sure. And so all federal agencies particularly, but particularly in VR, vocational rehabilitation, is really trying to think about how to be more agile, how to think about its services differently, while also obviously maximizing dollars. Again, the governor's budget allows MRC to have an $8.5 million increase in its budget, in its base, which is a great achievement if that is approved and supported by you all. I think that's one way that you can help us. I also want to just quickly mention that there are other federal guidelines that we could utilize better, and I'd love to be able to have that conversation further with you all as we move down in the future.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment, if I could. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony today on your budget and everything that MRC is doing. I just want to tell the audience that you, as the commissioner of this organization, leads by example, and I'll tell you why. Because you were in my office recently, and each person that has a disability or an ability, different abilities, as you said in your testimony, it's very individualized how we help individuals with their different needs. To be able to make them as productive as possible, whether in the workforce, whether living independently, whatever it might be. And you lead by example by looking at different cases. For example, one that came into my office that we needed some assistance with, you came and personally took that on. And so I'm so appreciative. That shows that you not only support this individual, you support your staff that come in and work so hard. And so I just wanted to let the audience know how appreciative I am of your personal touch. And it's not just for my constituent, it's for every person in this Commonwealth. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Senator. And, I do want to say, very similar to what was said, I am incredibly blessed that I've always done work that I actually have been put on earth to do. And so I thank you for your acknowledgement. I think every individual really does have their own story, and we need to honor it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony, for all the work you're doing, and for coming to Arlington.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioner DiArcangelo, we're now going to hear from the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Representative Garbally, Rita, rest of the members. It's great to be with you. It's David DiArcangelo. I'm Commissioner of the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, and we're very pleased with the governor's budget, so I can tell you that right off the bat. We primarily have three programs, three main accounts that we work with you to administer. First one being our social rehabilitation account. That is entirely state funds. The second being our vocational rehabilitation account. That is federal funds with a state match. And then the third being our deaf-blind extended supports accounts, the Turning 22 account, and that is all state money as well. So those are the three primary programs where we serve our approximately 29,000 consumers, about 22,000 active consumers on our registry, ranging all the way from birth to, we have consumers that are over the age of 100. So they're in every community. People with blindness, they're in all of your districts. So we're pleased to represent your constituents to the best of our ability. We think we do that very well. We consider ourselves a world-class organization. We're the oldest blindness agency in the country. My predecessors include Ms. Helen Keller. So we have very established programs that are administered by our counselors, so a lot of social services and vocational rehabilitation services. Those are our two main functions that we provide. A number of other programs that we have offered, though, they're listed here in the sheets. If everybody has the handout, I'm pleased to go through them if you'd like. But I'm also interested in a dialogue. Any questions that you may have, certainly here to answer. I brought my CFO with me as well if you have any particular questions. Really, my emphasis has been on tomorrow marks my 7th month at being the commissioner, but I'm not new to the commission. I've been legally blind my whole life, and so I understand the programs very well because I've gone through the programs. And there was talk earlier of SSI and SSDI. I've been on both of those programs. I understand them from a user. I also understand them a little bit from the prerogative of being an aide in the legislature as well, working in the governor's office, my previous role as the director of the Office on Disability. So I think I have an understanding of these programs from a number of different prerogatives. And I recognize that there's numbers that we look at, and the almighty budget is the most important bill you're going to work on all year. But I recognize that that data is more than just numbers in a column and a row. It ties back to people and their families. And I have a deep appreciation for that, as I know you do, of your constituents as well. So I just want you to know that while we want to use data to be able to effectively program, to provide the services to the best of our ability, oftentimes we can't quantify what is qualitative. So I want you to know that my team, working throughout all 351 cities and towns, they're in those living rooms and at those kitchen tables, talking to people about blindness and their families and about all of the challenges and opportunities that blindness presents. Oftentimes we think of blindness as one thing, and you maybe picture a person with a guide dog or a cane or something, but I think it's important to recognize that somewhere between 60 and 70% of all of our consumers that you see here on our central register have some usable vision. So they may present like me, high partial. And when it comes time, maybe you'll be asking questions. I may refer to my colleague here because I can't see your nameplates, so forgive me in advance. I don't want to get anybody's name or title wrong. So again, there's a number of programs we work through, and we have great community partners. We just recently held a great stakeholder meeting, first of its kind, over at Perkins School for the Blind, where we had the leaders from the blindness community come out and really do a base set. And it was kind of like a show and tell meeting where we showed them all of the policies and procedures that we undergo with you all, with our state rules and state laws and regulations, but also with our federal laws and regulations. A number of terms came up earlier that we are very much involved with our partners MRC, and that's WIOA, as well as the Rehab Act and other federal programs that we try to administer and make sure that people who want to pursue employment have the access and opportunity to do that successfully. We have a great internship program that's provided great results over the years. We're providing job fairs as well. We're doing one, matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, where we're teaming up with other agencies across the administration in transportation, and MRC's involved, and we're involved in other agencies as well to get people with disabilities, and in my case, particularly people with blindness, access and opportunities to employment if that's what they choose. So a number of other programs too for our seniors and elders. I think you'll see through the data that a significant amount of our central register, about 2/3 actually, are over the age of 85, which makes our average median age of people with blindness and on our register about 80 or 81 years old, depending upon how you look at it. So many people who encounter blindness are doing so later in life, and we know that people age into blindness. So solving for their challenges oftentimes is different than solving for challenges of somebody who's in grammar school. So we try to do that whole range through our different programs. So again, I'm pleased to answer any questions that you may have. And again, I think we're very pleased with the governor's budget. He's been very forthright with us, and we've had a great relationship with Secretary Sutters and the rest of the administration. So we feel confident that we can effectively administer our programs and services this year.
Great. Thank you so much for your testimony and for the work you're doing. And again, it's great to see these agencies coordinating with each other, and it just makes so much sense. And I think it can reach a lot more people efficiently. I have one question. The Turning 22 program, there's a small increase in it, about 1.3%.
Yes.
It's just over the 2019 GAA. And I was just wondering, does this fully fund the program? Does it for 2020, or will you be able to increase it? How does it, can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. Yes, it does fully fund the program. That program is susceptible to ups and downs because of the nature of the services that we administer. So just for edification, so we partner with our colleagues at Mass Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Developmental Services, and other agencies as well. So this population are people that are primarily blind, but they also have additional disabilities, most specifically deaf-blind. So these are people that are blind and they also are deaf. So many of them require significant round-the-clock services, group home services, PCA services. So those services, the intensity of them, if people come in or out of that program, you see fluctuations in that budget because of that. We have a really good handle on who comes in and out of that program. It's a very discrete population. It's a fairly small population. So when changes do happen, we become aware of it immediately. So I think what you're seeing is a change, just a change of even a couple or a few people can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars change in that program. So we're well in touch with it. It is fully funded, and we're providing the services for our people who need them.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Questions?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Just on the 22 program as well, again, it's funny, we were just talking about this program yesterday and its importance to the people of our community. And you had mentioned, Mr. Commissioner, just something about getting people with blindness access to employment. One of the biggest concerns expressed by the parents of some of the children who are in the program who are about to go out and be without the services that are provided at the local level and the high schools mainly. What are we doing to better ensure that there is employment for these individuals moving forward?
Thank you, Representative Kelcourse. Great question. So I think when we talk about employment, it's important to consider the many different types of employment. So we deal with competitive integrated employment, and with this population, that's the goal, but that might not always be the goal for every case. So in some cases, maybe it's not competitive integrated employment, maybe it's a center-based employment. In that case, we're working with, again, our partners at either DDS or some other community-based organizations that we work with, maybe MABV or the Carroll Center or one of the ARCs, for example. It would depend upon which area of the state we were talking about, to try to work with the consumer, their advocates and their family, to understand what's going to be the best solution for them and what's really going to be able to provide them the most dignity and self-determination that they're after. That's really what we were trying to do there. Another interesting thing, too, is if they are deafblind, we're talking about, we have engaged with the Helen Keller Center. That's a national center. That's a federal program that we work with them and partner with them to be able to provide these services for people that need both blindness amelioration and deafness amelioration at the same time. So that's often the tactile sign language you'll see. So they're really the specialists in that. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, not only on the person, but then again by the particular area, because that's really going to then determine what community partner we're able to work with.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes.
I had a quick question about technology.
Yeah.
About 6 months ago, I brought about 2 dozen of my constituents to the Perkins School, and he went to the store, which the store is outstanding.
Yes.
And in the store, they have new technologies around unscented pens and iPads and better walking devices for individuals, and they help improve their lives tremendously. But what I did observe was the cost of many of these devices are exorbitant. Is the commission working to find ways to make these products to improve the quality of their lives more reasonable where they can afford?
Yeah, great question. And most of the products, if not all of the products that we provide, come free. That's you all providing us the funding to be able to provide that for our consumers, for a large amount of them. And particularly if you're a VR client, so you're pursuing a vocational rehabilitation outcome, one of the things I think it's important to let you all know, and one of the things we're trying to get the word out about, is we'll actually go into employers and ameliorate it for employers. Oftentimes the employers think that they have to take on the expense. No, we'll go in there, we'll buy the JAWS. JAWS is a screen reader technology that will help read the screen for blind people. We'll provide the JAWS, we'll provide the Zoom text and other ameliorations as well. So yeah, I mean, we really look at low or no cost whenever possible to be able to provide. And again, it's a case-by-case thing. Some people who are low vision, it's going to be larger print things, or it's going to be magnifiers and things like that, or desktop computer magnifiers, or larger keyboards, all different types of devices. So I think it depends on the case-by-case. What I would also say is technology is a relative term. If you looked at technology 50 years ago, it was the Perkins Brailler sitting on somebody's desk. That's still effective technology. It might not be cutting edge technology, but that's still in use today. So I think it depends upon how cutting edge you want to be. The administration, when I was at Office on Disability and Transportation, I know is working on for the MBTA to be able to put the beacons out. So with some of the new wearables, people with low vision can be able to know where the bus stop is just by the beeping, or just by an audio sound. We're experimenting with other devices. There's the OrCam device where you can look at things and it will turn it into an optical character recognition and read it for you. Or there's these IRA glasses where you can look at something and somebody will, on the other end on a video, be able to explain what you're seeing through your earpiece. So there's that. We're even experimenting with things like Alexa. Alexa is a common device right now. It hasn't really been viewed as an assistive technology thing, but particularly for some of our seniors, we're looking at that as maybe an opportunity. So we're doing a pilot with that right now, actually. So all different types of technology. We're very much in tune with it. We do our best to repurpose as much technology as we can. I mentioned the large computer magnifiers that we have. We really reuse those very well, and really none of them go unused. We repurpose them, and we work with our community partners too. The Lions Club, again, MABV, Perkins, Carroll Center. People in the Commonwealth that need the technology, we find a way of getting it to them, either through the resources we have or our community partners. MRC has their mass match program. So we find a way to get them the technology they need to be successful.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from? Oh, great. Well, thank you. And I think part of our job is to get the word out that you all, that you have these programs and you can support people in the community.
Sure.
So thank you so much.
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Appreciate you coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. We now have the Massachusetts Office of Refugees and Immigrants. Are you here, Executive Director Mary Trong? Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Friedman, and Representative Gartley, and the rest of the member of the committee. It is truly an honor for me to be able to testify before you for the fourth time. And that's because I have the honor to serve as the Executive Director for ORI, Office for Refugees and Immigrants. So I would like to say how much I appreciate, and it's actually my heartfelt thank you to each and every one of the committee. I would like to be able to answer any question you have, and I am sure that you will have some questions for me. But first, if I may say, the mission of ORI is to help promote the full participation of refugees and immigrants as self-sufficient individual and family in the economic, social, and civic life of the Commonwealth. And as a state refugee coordinator, it is my duty to ensure that these most vulnerable newcomers to the state of Massachusetts are able to integrate into our community as seamlessly as possible. So today, 95% of ORI's funding comes from federal sources in order to support the administration of the state refugee resettlement program. During fiscal year 2018, which started from October 1st, 2017 to September 30th, 2018, a total of 783 new individuals were enrolled into the Massachusetts Refugee Resettlement Program. This represents 61% drop from the previous year of fiscal year 2017, when 1,993 refugees and immigrants resettled in our state. This came as a result of the reduction in the national refugee ceiling, admission ceiling, from 50,000 to 45,000. So the majority of incoming refugees are from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Haiti, Afghanistan, Ukraine, and El Salvador. Although the number of refugees is smaller than in the past, the need to integrate refugees into using the Massachusetts Refugee Resettlement Program has not diminished. Newcomers in particular require services and support to achieve integration, help finding housing, medical care, English language classes, job training, financial literacy support, citizenship assistance, and more to adapt to their new lives. In fiscal year 2018, ORI has served more than 6,500 refugees and immigrants across all federal, state, and private funded programs. ORI strongly advocate for continuous support of the Citizenship for the New American program, which is CNAP. This program helps our low-income legal permanent resident in Massachusetts become naturalized U.S. citizens and fully engaged community members. Services include but are not limited to English for speakers of other languages and civic classes, assistance with USCIS naturalization application, interview and preparation help, and other support critical services such as interpretation and referral services. All of these services administered by CNAP providers are closely monitored by ORI to achieve the best possible performance and outcome for refugees and immigrants. So last year, CNAP enrolled 1,810 Massachusetts residents and made notable progress by expanding to 18 service providers across the Commonwealth. So I'm proud to say that CNAP's administration succeeded its target for passing the citizenship exam. The goal was for 6,500 of refugees and immigrants taking the citizenship exam to pass it. But in fiscal year 2018, CNAP has achieved an astounding 84% success rate. The detail is 764 took the citizenship exam and 640 passed it. I would like to express my gratitude to Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, Secretary Sutters, and all of you for your support. So the proposal of the Governor and Lieutenant Governor of $501,575 of state funding to support this important program. The federal fiscal year 20 budget recommendation will help to facilitate the administration and dissemination of CNAP to over 2,000 potential citizens. In addition, this funding will help OI to implement the recommendation of the Latino Advisory Commission by assisting eligible Latino in applying for citizenship, in addition to offering financial literacy training for the Latino community. So in closing, I would like to once again say it is an honor for me to work on behalf of the state to integrate a newcomer into the Commonwealth. I would welcome any question that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for coming at quite an achievement, 84% success rate.
Yes.
That's really for citizenship. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Really impressive.
Thank you. I'm sure being the last speaker, you would be tired. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's no less important even though you're the last speaker. but
Thank you.
we really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Okay, I do not believe there's anybody else who is here to testify on behalf of one of the agencies. So, thank you to everyone who participated in today's hearing. Thank you to the wonderful town of Arlington for being our gracious host, and thank you to my co-chair for this meeting, Rep. Garbely. And do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. We are adjourned.
Nobody could.